Chapter 545. Did we pass? Shui Ruo's mouth was slightly open. Her expression was blank, as if she was in a dream. Just a moment ago, they were still surrounded by iron puppets. The next moment, they appeared safely outside the canyon. This sudden change caused Shui Ruo to be unable to regain her senses for a while. Yiguchen stood calmly, as if this was a trivial matter. Shui Ruo finally managed to regain her senses. She looked at Yiguchen with admiration and respect. This young man who appeared in front of her as a wandering barbarian at the beginning was now so unfathomable. The dragoness also breathed a sigh of relief, but she wasn't too surprised by this result. If Five Crown King couldn't pass the puppet array, then it would be too ridiculous. The stormy wave saint shrank to the side, not daring to make a sound. He only felt his face turn red and hot. The lion and tiger saints looked at Yiguchen with a much more dignified expression. If they could ignore the bloodline test in the first round. In that case, this round would be a test of real combat power. In the end, only about half of the people passed the second round. Mu Lanue looked deeply at Yiguchen, then led the group to the third round's test location. The third round's test location was next to a mountain peak. Mu Lanue led the group to the foot of the mountain. This third round is also the last round. Do you see the stone pillar at the top of the mountain? Mu Lanue said. The crowd glanced over and discovered a stone pillar at the top of the mountain. The top of the pillar was covered with various totem runes, as if countless totem runes had been carved onto it. That's a totem pillar of my Mu Lanue family. It can emulate the pressure released by the ancestral totem. The third round will test your supreme totems and totem power. Whoever can withstand the pressure of the ancestral totem and reach the top will pass. Of course, the shorter the time, the better. Mu Lanue's words caused an uproar. The first round didn't need to be mentioned. Although the second round was a bit difficult, everyone could still pass. But the third round wasn't so simple. An upper-level totem suppression of a lower-level totem was almost like a rule that could not be violated. Not everyone could withstand the pressure of the primogenitor totem, even if it was just a simulation. Everyone, including the wooden bell spirit, the lion-tiger saints, and the others wore a stern look. Instead, it was Yiguchen who revealed a strange expression. Using the pressure of a simulated progenitor totem to test him, who had 5 progenitor totems. It wasn't just Yiguchen. Even Dragon Lady looked at Yiguchen strangely. If the third stage was the most difficult stage for the rest of the people, it would be extremely difficult. For Yiguchen, who had 5 progenitor totems, this was considered going easy on him. This kind of test was simply like Li Gui meeting Li Kue, a fake meeting the real thing. But at that moment, the lion and tiger saints looked at Dragon Lady and Yiguchen. Dragon Girl, do you dare to compete with me? White Lion Holy Sun suddenly said. Oh, are you sure you want to compete? Dragon Lady almost laughed out loud in her heart, but on the surface, she frowned coldly. The lion and tiger saints looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. Their golden-eyed white lion and heavenly demonic tiger totems were the top of the supreme totems. It was much easier for them to resist the progenitor totem's pressure than the others. Dragon Lady had not spread the news of her totem's transformation, so the lion and tiger saints still thought that her totem was the serene water dragon. This way, their advantage would be revealed. Of course, or are you aquatics afraid? Black Tiger Holy Sun provoked. Why would I be afraid? But since there are 2 of you, I want to compete with my husband, Dragon Lady said and pulled Yiguchen to her side. Yiguchen was speechless. Wasn't this bullying the lion and tiger saints? But seeing this, their eyes flashed and they were thinking. Although the Triple Crown King had 3 totems, if it was just an ordinary supreme totem, it might not be easier for him to resist the progenitor totem's pressure. So without thinking for long, the lion and tiger saints agreed. But since we are going to compete, how can there be no wager? Dragon Lady smiled. Ah, I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it. The lion and tiger saints were stunned for a moment, then laughed. They were very confident in themselves and thought that they would win. If Dragon Lady had not said so, they would have forgotten that they could reap benefits from it. Let's bet 10 5 elements sacred items, Dragon Lady said. 10. Some of the holy sons around them were surprised. The 5 elements sacred items were not something that could be found on the streets. They were very helpful for totem cultivation. Even if they were holy sons, it would be painful to take out 10 sacred items at once. The lion and tiger saints were stunned for a moment, but they did not hesitate. With their status and strength, they could take out 10 sacred items. Dragon Lady rolled her eyes and said, I heard that the barbarians also produce a special sacred item called the 5 Elements Stone. It contains the power of 5 elements. Dragon Lady's words made the lion and tiger saints' expressions change slightly. Ordinary divine items were nothing. They could afford them. But the 5 Elements Stone was different. It was a rare sacred item that contained the power of 5 elements. It was very precious. Yiguchen's eyes flickered. Dragon Lady must have fought for the 5 Elements Stone for him. Because only Yiguchen had the 5 Elements Totem. Why, are you not confident in the competition? Dragon Lady smiled. She was like a sly little fox, baiting the two of them. The lion and tiger saints frowned. They looked at Dragon Lady and Yiguchen, but they could not think of a way for them to win. When Dragon Lady saw this, she gritted her teeth. She flipped her hand and took out a god item. The sacred item was as beautiful as an ice crystal. Gosh, it's the sacred item of the water tribe, the rainbow ice crystal. A holy son saw it and exclaimed. It was obvious that Dragon Lady wanted to use the rainbow ice crystal as a wager for the 5 Elements Stone. When the lion and tiger saints saw this, a trace of greed appeared in their eyes. In addition, they were confident in themselves. Without much hesitation, they agreed to it. This wager attracted some attention. The stormy wave holy son opened his mouth slightly. He wanted to say that Dragon Lady was being reckless, but he shut his mouth in the end and watched coldly. Mulanua glanced at them with slight interest. But after some consideration, Mulanua still felt that the lion and tiger saints had a better chance of winning. In terms of the number of totems, Dragon Lady might have the advantage. After all, she had the Triple Crown King. But in terms of quality, Mulanua favored the lion and tiger saints. Then, the third test officially began. On the top of the mountain, the countless totem brands on the surface of the totem pillar seemed to come to life, releasing various colors of light. Then, an extremely powerful aura covered the entire area, as if a primordial dragon had awakened. Even at the foot of the mountain, the holy sons and holy daughters felt that it was difficult to breathe. The supreme totems in their bodies were unstable. Is this the aura of the primogenitor totem? Many people were shocked. This is just a simulation. If it's the real primogenitor totem, how powerful would it be? Some holy sons sighed. I finally understand why even Tuoba Shang failed against the Quintuple Crown King. How powerful would this aura be if it's multiplied by 5? Many people thought of the Quintuple Crown King and were shocked by his strength. The only person who did not feel anything was Yiguchen. Chapter 546. As the pressure of the totem pillar spread, the third test officially began. A saint stepped out and released his supreme totem. Then, he endured the pressure of the totem pillar and began to climb to the top. The closer he got to the top, the stronger the pressure, and the slower his speed. As for that saint, he barely made it halfway up the mountain before collapsing. His face was pale as he tumbled down, covered in dust. This is too difficult. The expressions of some holy sons and holy daughters changed abruptly. This saint wasn't weak, but he couldn't even reach the top. Not to mention the time it would take. It was meaningless. Failed. Mulanua's expression was calm as if she had expected this. Although it was just a simulation of the ancestral totem's pressure, it was far from what an ordinary saint could withstand. It would be considered good if 10 or 20 of the saints could reach the top. Next, the saints and saintesses stepped out and began to climb. But without exception, most of them only made it halfway up the mountain. The best among them were only close to the top before they were pressed down by the pressure. Isn't this test a bit harsh? It seems that not many can truly reach the top, Mu Lanqiu said. I don't expect many to reach the top. It's enough to find a few good helpers. But Mu Zhongling and the lion and tiger saints should be able to reach the top, Mu Lanyu said. What about Dugu Wubai and Dragoness? Mu Lanqiu asked. Mu Lanyua's beautiful eyes flickered. Dragoness must have awakened her water dragon bloodline. But her totem is the serene blue serpent, which isn't too strong among the supreme totems. As for the Triple Crown King, his totem probably can't compare to the lion and tiger saints, so it's hard to predict the result. Mu Lanyua didn't deny Dragoness and Yiguchen, but she didn't have high hopes either. Is that so? Mu Lanqiu looked deeply at Yiguchen. She vaguely felt that this Triple Crown King, who had shocked the world with a single feat, would make another shocking move today. Let me. In the crowd, a green-haired and green-eyed saintess of the wood race, Mu Zhongling, stepped out. She also released her own totem. It was very strange. It was not an ordinary totem, but a big tree with green light. It rose from the ground behind the wooden bell spirit. The ancient green tree had a strange life force. Its trunk was like jade, entwined with green vines. What a strange totem. Yiguchen gave it a sidelong glance. This was the first time he had seen such a totem. That's a plant totem. It's a towering ancient tree. Even among the highest totems, it's one of the best, Dragon Lady explained. As the top saintess of the Wood clan, the wooden bell spirit naturally had some skills. Before, Dragoness was envious of the wooden bell spirit for having such a totem. But now, he didn't care at all. The transformed Seven Seas Jiao Dragon totem was no weaker than the towering ancient tree. Among the supreme totems, it was considered one of the best. After releasing the totem, the wooden bell spirit tapped her feet lightly and flashed toward the mountain peak. Although the totem's pressure was very strong, the wooden bell spirit looked very relaxed halfway up the mountain. As expected of a top supreme totem. Below, many saints and saintesses looked envious. However, when they were halfway up the mountain, the pressure of the totem increased abruptly. Even the wooden bell spirit was no longer as relaxed as before. But behind her, the towering ancient tree's branches and leaves suddenly shook. A green light enveloped the wooden bell spirit's delicate body. She felt the pressure suddenly disappear. Then, the wooden bell spirit climbed up step by step. In the end, it took a full 5 minutes for the wooden bell spirit to completely step on the mountain peak. But the moment she stepped on the mountain peak, the wooden bell spirit's face was extremely pale. She couldn't even stand steadily. Very good, Mu Lanyu praised. Some of the spectating saints and saintesses also cheered. The wooden bell spirit was the first to completely reach the mountain peak. Humph, what a procrastinator. Others admired the wooden bell spirit, but there was a faint trace of disdain in the eyes of the lion and tiger saints. Being able to reach the peak was already considered good, but it was still not enough to be taken seriously by them. Dragon Girl, don't forget about our battle. Please be a witness. At this moment, the white lion saint stood out and said loudly. The surrounding saints and saintesses all looked over. It seemed that the lion and tiger saints were also about to start climbing. Don't worry, I, the Dragon Girl, will never go back on my words. But you guys, don't go back on your words later. The Dragon Girl smiled. Ha, where does your confidence come from? The black tiger saint shook his head as if he thought the Dragon Girl's behavior was ridiculous. Next, the lion and tiger saints also started climbing. If the two of them climbed at the same time, the pressure would be even stronger. Roar! The two of them summoned their totems at the same time. Two earth-shattering roars shook heaven and earth, echoing in all directions. Vigorous totem power spread out, and two totem spirits appeared in the void. One was a golden-eyed white lion. Its aura was shocking, and it was extremely vigorous. Its fur was snow-white, and its golden eyes were like two small suns. It was breathtaking. The other was a heavenly demonic tiger. Its body was pitch black, and its demonic aura was billowing. Its blood-red eyes scanned the crowd, frightening them. What a powerful totem! Most of the saints and saintesses present had the same thought. These two totems were more powerful than ordinary supreme totems. Even the dragon girl had a faint trace of seriousness in her eyes. Although she did not like the lion and tiger saints, she had to admit that they were indeed powerful. Humph, open your eyes wide and watch carefully. The white lion saint glanced at the dragon girl, and then started climbing with the black tiger saint. Their speed was really like that of tigers, leopards, and lions. They climbed halfway up the mountain in an instant. When they were halfway up the mountain, the pressure suddenly increased. Even the lion and tiger saints slowed down. But they were still faster than the wooden bell spirit. In the end, under the astonished gazes of the crowd, the lion and tiger saints only used 15 minutes to reach the top of the mountain. That's fast. Mulanua's beautiful eyes were also filled with surprise. Even if she wanted to reach the top, she would only be a little faster than the lion and tiger saints. Dragon girl, with everyone here as witnesses, you can't go back on your words. 10 5 elements sacred items and the 7-colored ice crystal. The lion and tiger saints went down the mountain and sneered at the dragon girl, as if the result was already decided. The dragon girl did not care. She just looked at them coldly. Yiguchen thought for a while and brought Shui Ruo along. Are you sure you want the three of us? If so, the pressure will increase again. Seeing Yiguchen bring Shui Ruo along, Mulanue could not help but have a headache. In the eyes of others, this challenge was incomparably difficult. But to this young man, it seemed to be a piece of cake. The dragon girl glanced at Yiguchen. Since he was confident, the dragon girl did not say anything more. He even brought a burden with him. The lion and tiger sages sneered when they saw this. If it was just the dragon girl and Yiguchen, there might be some possibility. However, with the addition of a burden, the result was not certain. The dragon girl, Yiguchen, and Shui Ruo prepared to climb. Chapter 547. At the top of the mountain, the totem pillar released a strong pressure. The three of them climbed at the same time. The pressure was even stronger than that of the lion and tiger saints. Dragoness immediately released her totem. A terrifying dragon that was dozens of feet long appeared behind the dragon girl. It had dark blue scales and was surrounded by water vapor and cold currents. It had an extremely powerful aura. What? What's that? Dragon Lady's supreme totem caused an uproar. As the most famous saintess of the water tribe, Dragon Lady's totem was no secret. But the huge and powerful flood dragon was definitely not a serene blue flood dragon. Why is your totem like this? The lion and tiger saints were stunned for a moment. Dragon Lady's performance was completely out of their expectations. The lion and tiger saints felt that the seven seas flood dragon was no weaker than the golden eye white lion and the heavenly demon tiger. I'll say it again. You're just frogs at the bottom of a well, Dragon Lady said lightly. On the other side, Mulanue looked surprised. I didn't expect Dragon Lady's totem to transform after awakening her water dragon bloodline. Mulanue misunderstood and blamed Dragon Lady's transformation on the awakening of the water dragon bloodline. But she didn't know that Dragon Lady's transformation was helped by Yiguchen's ancestral totem. As Dragon Lady activated her totem, Shui Ruo also activated her totem. But her totem was much weaker than Dragon Lady's. After all, Shui Ruo's was only an elite totem. Upgrading it to a supreme totem was already the limit. Luckily we have this burden. Seeing the aura of Shui Ruo's totem, the lion and tiger saints breathed a sigh of relief. However, Yi Gu-chen, who was the focus of everyone's attention, did not release his totem immediately. What's he doing? Many people were puzzled. Let's go, Yi Gu-chen said lightly. Even if he didn't release his totem, the pressure couldn't do anything to him. But in the eyes of others, it looked like Dragon Lady and Shui Ruo were protecting him with their own totem power. That works? Is he still a Triple Crown champion? Yeah, don't you have a bit of manliness? Seeing Yi Gu-chen standing between the two women without activating his totem, many saints and saintesses secretly despised him. Mu Lanyue frowned slightly and looked at Yi Gu-chen. Ha, that can't be. Could it be that the true burden is this Triple Crown champion? The lion and tiger sages exchanged a glance, and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Yi Gu-chen turned a blind eye to everyone's playful gazes. The three of them reached the middle of the mountain in a very short amount of time. However, the moment he reached the middle of the mountain, the oppressive might suddenly increased by several times. Even the Dragon Lady's Seven Seas Serpent Dragon was under immense pressure. It was as if she had fallen into a swamp. Shui Ruo was even more unbearable. Her entire body was drenched in sweat, and it was difficult for her to move an inch. It seems like there's a result. The lion and tiger saints were delighted to see this. Is he really trying to be brave? Mu Lanyue sighed slightly. If all three of them failed, it would be a huge loss. Under everyone's gaze, the Dragon Lady and Shui Ruo slowed down. Seeing this, Yi Gu-chen no longer held back. He stomped his foot on the ground. In an instant, there was a loud explosion. The incomparably vigorous totem power poured out like a broken dam. At the same time, he used the wave illusion secret technique. The three ancestral totems imitated the supreme totem and spread out. What a powerful aura. No wonder he's the Triple Crown champion. Seeing that Yi Gu-chen had finally used his three totems, there was an uproar below. The Triple Crown champion was already considered a top existence among the barbarian saints. Even the lion and tiger sages didn't have a trace of contempt in their eyes. Although the people below couldn't feel it, the Dragon Lady and Shui Ruo beside Yi Gu-chen could clearly feel it. All the pressure was suddenly lifted, and they felt incomparably relaxed. Let's go. Yi Gu-chen smiled faintly. The Dragon Lady and Shui Ruo looked at each other and smiled. Shui Ruo didn't think too much. She only thought that Yi Gu-chen's three totems could completely isolate the pressure. She didn't know that Yi Gu-chen's three totems were at the ancestral level. Then, under Yi Gu-chen's protection, the Dragon Lady and Shui Ruo were extremely relaxed. They walked as if they were walking on flat ground. There was almost no pressure to speak of. Their relaxed appearance made the lion and tiger sages dumbfounded. Even Mu Lanyue looked at the three of them strangely. If it weren't for the totem pillar at the top of the mountain still operating, she would have thought that the totem pillar had failed. In the end, under the lion and tiger sages' dumbfounded gazes, Yi Gu-chen and the other two reached the top of the mountain in less than 15 minutes. This broke everyone's record. It even broke Mu Lanyue's record. Sister Yu, do you still think that Dugu Wubai is insignificant? Mu Lanyue asked. Mu Lanyue was speechless. Indeed, at the beginning, although she had heard of the Triple Crown King and knew that Yi Gu-chen had defeated Tuoba Lai, she didn't think too much of it. After all, the Tuoba camp had also recruited some Triple Crown Kings. But now, it seemed that Yi Gu-chen's performance in these three tests was far beyond Mu Lanyue's expectations. Mu Lanyue was even doubtful that she would be able to suppress Dugu Wubai if she were to compete with him. With such a powerful helper, the situation would be better than before, even if they couldn't completely resist the Tuoba family. Yi Gu-chen and the other two returned to the bottom of the mountain. Everyone looked at them with different gazes. Especially when they looked at Yi Gu-chen, there was a faint sense of awe. The stormy wave saint didn't dare to look directly at Yi Gu-chen's eyes anymore. He bent his body like a coward. As for the lion and tiger saints, they stood in the same place, their faces alternating between green and white. The dragoness glanced at them and smiled faintly. The lion and tiger saints won't go back on their words, right? Hearing the dragoness's words, the lion and tiger saints' faces darkened. Dragoness, enough is enough, the white lion saint said in a deep voice. The 5 elemental stone was a top 5 elemental divine item. It was extremely rare even among the barbarians. Even the 2 of them only had a few pieces in total. Now, they had to take out a piece and 10 other divine items. It was a huge loss. Ha, enough is enough. If we were the ones who lost this time, would you be so magnanimous? The dragoness mocked. Although the saints and saintesses around them didn't dare to say anything openly, their hidden gazes revealed a hint of disdain. The barbarians hated untrustworthy people the most. They could feel the sharp gazes piercing into their bodies like needles. No matter how thick-skinned the lion and tiger saints were, they still felt embarrassed. If they didn't fulfill their promise today, their reputations would be ruined. Take it. The white lion saint gritted his teeth and swung his hand. The dragoness took the stone and looked at it. Her eyes curved into crescents. In the past, it was the lion and tiger saints who oppressed the water tribe. Now, the dragoness finally had her revenge. Without any hesitation, the dragoness handed the 5 elemental stone to Yiguchin. Yiguchin didn't hesitate and took it. As soon as it touched his hand, he felt the 5 elemental powers in the 5 elemental stone harmonizing with each other. Interesting. Yiguchin's eyes lit up. The 5 elemental stone would be of great help to his understanding of the 5 elemental totems and the 5 elemental sword will. Next, all the saints and saintesses went through the pressure test. Finally, Mulanue walked in front of everyone and looked around. Her gaze paused on Yiguchin and she said, "Everyone, the 3 tests have been passed. Next, I will announce the candidates who are qualified to follow me into the door of the ancient god." As soon as she finished speaking, the atmosphere suddenly became tense. Chapter 548. Why did they come to the Mulan family for the test? It was all for the chance to enter the door of the ancient god. Everyone knew what the door of the ancient god represented. Ancestral bloodlines, sacred medicines, divine weapons, totem inheritances, every single one of these opportunities was enough to make people go crazy. If someone was lucky enough to obtain the ancestral bloodline inheritance, their status in the barbarian tribe would be different. Even the 5 Elements Temple would focus on nurturing them. For this opportunity, they were willing to gamble. That was why they were willing to come to the Mulan family to assist Mulanue. When Mulanue finished speaking, the hearts of all the saints and saintesses tightened. Those saints and saintesses who didn't pass all the tests were disappointed. They knew they didn't have much of a chance. As for those who had barely passed through the 3 stages, they were on tenterhooks and extremely nervous. Lion and tiger saints, Mulanue said. The people present were not too surprised when they heard this. The lion and tiger saints were the candidates Mulanue relied on. However, in this way, 2 out of the 10 spots had been reduced. This was undoubtedly a torment for the remaining people. Wooden Bell Spirit, Mulanue continued. The Wooden Bell Spirit pursed her lips and smiled. She wasn't surprised by her selection. Next, Mulanue picked a few more people, all of whom performed well in the 3 tests. Yiguchin stood calmly without the slightest hint of nervousness. He believed that if Mulanue was a little wiser, she would know what to choose. Dragoness, Mulanue said. Dragoness nodded. She wasn't surprised, but she glanced at Yiguchin with worry. Mulanue also glanced at Yiguchin, but she seemed to be deliberately dragging it out. She named 2 more names, but she didn't mention Yiguchin. This was because Yiguchin had always been calm and collected. Therefore, Mulanue wanted to see Yiguchin's nervous expression. But to her disappointment, Yiguchin's eyes were calm from beginning to end. As time passed, Mulanue had already chosen 8 people. Only 2 people were left. The hearts of the remaining saints and saintesses were in their throats, and their faces were flushed red. On the other hand, Yiguchin was as calm as an old monk in meditation. Mulanue secretly gritted her teeth. She felt that she couldn't see through Yiguchen. Don't you care about the quota? Mulanua finally couldn't help but ask Yiguchen. Yiguchen faintly glanced at Mulanua and said, "What's mine will naturally be mine. If I miss it, then so be it." Because he needed to enter the door of the ancient god, Yiguchen also performed well in the 3 tests. If Mulanua still refused to give him the spot, then Yiguchen would naturally think of other ways. It was impossible for Yiguchen to lower himself and beg for help. Mulanua took a deep look at Yiguchen with a trace of admiration in her beautiful eyes. She could tell that Yiguchen's personality and attitude were not an act, but had always been like this. People with this kind of personality were usually more reliable. The 9th spot, Dugu Wubai, Mulanua said. The lion and tiger saints showed a touch of disappointment in their eyes. They had hoped that Yiguchen would fail, although it was somewhat unlikely. Yiguchen nodded lightly. Thank you. Mulanua cleared her throat and looked around at everyone. She found that Shui Rua was the only one who had passed the 3 tests. But Mulanua really didn't think much of Shui Rua's strength. If it weren't for Yiguchen's help, Shui Rua wouldn't even have passed the 2nd test. Her beautiful eyes shifted again and fell on the Stormy Wave Saint. Although the Stormy Wave Saint's strength was not particularly strong, as the double champion, he could be considered outstanding among the remaining people. The last one, Stormy Wave Saint, Mulanua said. The Stormy Wave Saint's face was slightly stunned, and immediately showed extreme ecstasy. "Ha, thank you, Saintess Mulanua. You really have a good eye." The Stormy Wave Saint was overjoyed. His shrunken back seemed to be straightened, and his nostrils were almost raised to the sky. As the saying goes, when a villain achieves success, he becomes arrogant. "Oh, Dugu Wubai, you're just as so. Now that I also have the opportunity to enter the door of the ancient god, I'll get some opportunities. It won't take me too long to surpass you." The Stormy Wave Saint couldn't help but smile. He no longer looked at Yiguchen's eyes. In his mind, he was already outlining how to crush Yiguchen after getting the opportunities. And how to take the dragon lady back from Yiguchen. Beside Yiguchen, Shui Rua's face darkened slightly. She wasn't dissatisfied that she didn't get a place. Instead, she felt guilty because she had let down Yiguchen's help. Yiguchen frowned slightly and said, "Shui Rua is the only one left who passed the 3 tests. Why can't she get the last place?" As soon as he said that, everyone was stunned. This young man dared to talk to Mulanua in such a questioning tone. "Big brother Dugu, forget it. Shui Rua is too weak." Shui Rua hurriedly pulled Yiguchen's sleeve, fearing that he would make Mulanua unhappy. Mulanua also frowned slightly. She did admire Yiguchen, but Yiguchen's questioning made her a little uncomfortable. "Although Shui Rua passed the 3 tests, it was because of your help. She's not strong enough, so why can't she find someone to replace her?" Mulanua said. Hearing this, the Stormy Wave Saint raised his nose and said, "Dugu Wubai, are you questioning Saintess Mulanua's decision? As the Double Crown King, am I not stronger than Shui Rua? If Shui Rua drags us down in the door of the ancient god, will you be responsible?" The series of questions caused everyone present to nod their heads in agreement. In the actual situation, Mulanua's decision was indeed wise. Yiguchen's face turned slightly cold. "With me here, no one can drag us down." As soon as these words came out, everyone fell silent. This sentence was indeed arrogant. It was not something that anyone could say easily. Because Mulanua and the others were going to face the top geniuses of the Tuoba family, the Gold Clan, and the Thunder Clan. Do you know who we're going to face? Mulanua frowned tightly. She felt that Yiguchen should not be an arrogant person. But this was indeed not something that anyone was qualified to say. "Let Shui Rua join and leave Tuoba Shang to me," Yiguchen said calmly with his hands behind his back. It was as if he was saying something very normal. But when these words fell into everyone's ears, it was tantamount to a clap of thunder. "Did you hear what Dugu Wubai said? I must have misheard. Do you believe it? Anyway, I don't believe it. All the saints and saintesses' eyes were fixed on Yiguchen. Leave Tuoba Shang to him. Who did he think he was? Ridiculous, too ridiculous. Does he think he's invincible just because he defeated Tuoba Lai? How is he different from a frog at the bottom of a well? The lion and tiger saints shook their heads and sneered. Tuoba Shang had accumulated power in the barbarian race for a long time. Except for the defeat in the barren ancient arena, he had almost never lost. In the face of such an existence, almost no one dared to compete with him. Dugu Wubai, you're bragging too much. Who do you think you are? The mysterious quintuple crown king? The stormy wave saint couldn't help but scold loudly with a face full of sarcasm. How could he be willing to let Shui Rua take his spot? Even Mulanue was shocked by Yiguchen's words. She looked at Yiguchen and found that his pitch-black eyes were as deep as the night. There was not a trace of frivolity in them. It's up to you whether to believe it or not, Yiguchen said lightly. Although not a trace of aura was released, Mulanue felt as if she was facing the vast night sky alone. Mulanue was silent for a long time. Seeing this, the stormy wave saint raised the corner of his mouth with a smug smile. How could Mulanue change her mind because of such ignorant arrogance? Sigh, a sigh came out of Mulanue's mouth. The last spot is given to Shui Rua. The smug smile at the corner of the stormy wave saint's mouth froze and almost twitched. This was the so-called extreme joy begets sorrow. Chapter 549. Everyone present also stared at Mulanue in amazement. They didn't expect that Mulanue would really side with Yiguchen. Saintess Mulanue, this gate of the ancient god isn't a game. Are you sure you want to bring a burden? The lion and tiger saints frowned. Even they didn't expect that Mulanue would believe Yiguchen's arrogant words. Mulanue smiled bitterly and looked at Yiguchen. Although reason tells me that you're talking to yourself, this operation doesn't have much chance of winning. In this case, I might as well believe you this time. Hearing this, some people felt relieved. It turned out that Mulanue didn't think this operation would be successful. It must be because the Tuoba family gave her a lot of pressure. She thought that there wouldn't be much difference whether it was the stormy wave saint or Shui Rua. In this case, she might as well give Yiguchen face. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows slightly. Mulanue didn't believe his words. Was she just giving him face on the surface? But Yiguchen didn't refute. Thousands of words were not as simple and direct as actions. When the time came, Mulanue would know that she had made the right decision. No. No, how could it be? The most miserable person present was none other than the stormy wave saint. At this moment, his eyes were lifeless and he shook his head as if he couldn't believe that Mulanue would side with Yiguchen. Saintess Mulanue, how can you believe him? Anyone can say such arrogant words. He's not the five-crown king. How can he deal with Tuoba Shang? The stormy wave saint shrieked like a plucked rooster. Enough, this is the result. Those who haven't been chosen can stay in the Mulanue family to rest. When the time comes, we can go to the Five Elements Temple together to watch the ceremony. As for those who have been chosen, follow me. Mulanue said and walked directly into the mountain range. The lion and tiger saints, Wooden Bell Spirit, Dragon Lady, Yiguchen, and the others followed Mulanue and left. The stormy wave saint stood there dejectedly, looking extremely miserable. Dugu Wubai, I must see with my own eyes how you'll be crushed by Tuoba Shang. The stormy wave saint's eyes spat fire with a ferocious expression. On the other side, Mulanue, and the others led the 10 selected to a secluded pavilion. Mulanue turned around and glanced at the 10 people with a heavy expression on her face. Tell you the truth, Tuoba Shang's life's death cave. Life and death cave. Yiguchen was slightly confused. The lion and tiger saints and the others, at the waveses, the wave, and dragon. Dragons was LTs. The lane. Mu Lanyu nodded and said in a low voice, ever since Tuoba Shang was defeated by 5 Crown King in the barren ancient arena, he made up his mind and entered the life and death cave. I'm sure everyone knows that the life and death cave is the most dangerous place in the barbarian tribe. It can be said that it's the best place to train people. Although the opportunities inside can't be compared to the door of the ancient god, it's still extremely precious. In the past, those who entered the life and death cave almost all died. However, Tuoba Shang came out of the life and death cave a while ago, and I've heard that his strength has increased tremendously. Mu Lanyue's words made the atmosphere tense. Even the lion and tiger saints, who had said that they would definitely win this mission, looked unnatural. The current Tuoba Shang is much stronger than before. Even the Triple Crown King can't last long in front of him. At this point, Mu Lanyue glanced at Yi Guchen. She thought that Yi Guchen didn't know that Tuoba Shang had entered the life and death cave, which was why he dared to say that. Now that he knew the truth, what would Yi Guchen's attitude be? However, what surprised Mu Lanyue was that Yi Guchen's expression was still indifferent. Seeing this, Mu Lanyue continued, Tuoba Shang has already said that with his current strength, if he faces 5 Crown King again, he won't lose. These words were obviously a warning to Yi Guchen, telling him not to be too confident and impulsive. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed with a hint of battle intent. This kind of opponent is more interesting. Yi Guchen sighed in his heart. Not only was he not afraid, but he was also happy to meet a worthy opponent. If Tuoba Shang was still as strong as before, Yi Guchen wouldn't be too interested. Seeing that Yi Guchen's expression didn't change, Mu Lanyue sighed inwardly. He probably hasn't seen Tuoba Shang's strength after his transformation. Mu Lanyue thought to herself. Haha, Dugu Wubai, you just said that Tuoba Shang will be handed over to you. Don't disappoint the saintess. The lion and tiger saints looked at Yi Guchen mockingly, obviously wanting to see how he would back up his bold words. The gate of the ancient gods will reveal itself. Yi Guchen didn't want to say more. So what if he said more? Those who shouldn't believe him wouldn't believe him. When the time came, when the ironclad truth was placed in front of them, they would naturally know how laughable their actions were. Other than Tuoba Shang, the Tuoba family also has several powerful Triple Crown Kings. Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian, and the others don't need to be mentioned. You have to pay special attention to one person, Mu Lanyue said. Who? The Wooden Bell Spirit and the others all pricked up their ears. Mo Yi, Mu Lanyue said. Who is Mo Yi? Everyone looked at each other. They searched their memories but didn't know which clan had a holy son named Mo Yi. Mo Yi is a wandering barbarian, but he's also very powerful. He was chosen by the Tuoba family, so the enemies we'll face this time are all extraordinary, Mu Lanyue said solemnly. The entire atmosphere was completely silent. The transformed Tuoba Lai and the Triple Crown Kings of the Tuoba family. Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Saint, Feng Xiaotian, and the others. And Mo Yi, who had appeared out of nowhere. This lineup was indeed despairing. Even the lion and tiger saints were silent at this moment. Their eyes flickered as if they were thinking about something. Alright, there are still a few days before the gate of the ancient gods opens. You all can rest and recuperate in the Mu Lanyue family for the time being. When the time comes, we'll go together. Just do your best, Mu Lanyue said slowly after seeing the tense atmosphere. Everyone present nodded slightly, but they were a little absent-minded and depressed. Sigh, if only 5 Crown King was here. Mu Lanyue was annoyed. If she could rope in the mysterious 5 Crown King, she wouldn't have to fear Tuoba Shang now. But it was a foregone conclusion, so Mu Lanyue could only sigh. She didn't know that the person she had been longing to rope in was standing in front of her. Looks like the gate of the ancient gods won't be too boring this time. There was a faint smile in Yi Guchen's eyes. But in an instant, the smile turned into a touch of coldness. Anyone who dared to stand in his way, whether it was the transformed Tuoba Shang or Lei Jiuyo and the others, he could just crush them. Chapter 550. In the next few days, Yiguchen, Dragon Girl, and the others stayed in the Mulan clan to meditate. As for the saints and saintesses who were not chosen, they did not leave either. This was because they could also follow and attend the ceremony in a few days. In these few days, Yiguchen had been comprehending the Tao of the 5 elements. Yiguchen had already comprehended the individual Tao of the 5 elements. However, the Tao of the 5 elements was not something that could be achieved by simply superimposing the 5 elements together. Yiguchen began to comprehend with the help of the 5 elements stone he had obtained. The Tao of the 5 elements is endless, forming a cycle of death and destruction with a single thought. Yiguchen took out an epiphany leaf, put it in his mouth, and began to comprehend. His comprehension ability was already excellent, and with the help of the epiphany leaf and the 5 elements stone, Yiguchen's comprehension of the sword intent of the 5 elements became deeper and deeper. Of course, it was a peerless sword intent after all. It was obviously not realistic to comprehend it in just a few days. However, after 3 days, Yiguchen, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes. In his pitch-black eyes, there were 5 types of brilliance flashing one after another. In the next moment, Yiguchen stretched out a hand and opened it. A sharp metallic sword aura formed, and then there was a flash of green brilliance. Then there was steam rising, and then there was a blazing flame spreading. In the end, there was a vigorous earth attribute power. Still a little lacking, but compared to before, I've improved a lot. Yiguchen's eyes were bright. If it was before, he only had a vague idea of the sword intent of the 5 elements. But now, he had already comprehended it to an extremely profound level. Of course, he was still some opportunities away from completely comprehending it, but he was not far away. Yiguchen raised his other hand and opened it. The 5 elements stone's brilliance disappeared, and with a slight crush, it turned into dust and floated down. At this moment, Dragon Girl's voice came from outside the door. "Get ready, we're about to set off." "Are we finally going to the door of the ancient god?" Yiguchen stood up. His eyes were deep and carried a kind of obsession. Presumably, the door of the ancient god this time would be very exciting. Outside the mountain range where the Mulan family resided, there was a hubbub of voices. This time, a lot of people from the Mulan family would be going. Not only Mulan Yue and the others who had entered the door of the ancient god, but also many elders. The Raging Wave Saint Sun and some other saints and saintesses who had failed the selection were also here. They would go together when the time came. Yiguchen followed Dragon Lady and Shui Rua to this place. He immediately saw a middle-aged man with a slender body and a calm temperament. Mulan Yue stood behind the man. "Is that the patriarch of the Mulan family, Mulan Bo?" Looking at the middle-aged man, Yiguchen thought to himself. As the master of the barbarian clan, Miranbo's strength was undoubtedly at the divine dwelling stage. Even in the divine dwelling stage, he wasn't bad. Behind Mulan Bo, Mulan Yu nodded slightly when she saw Yiguchen and the others arrive. She brought some of the Mulan family's disciples to Yiguchen's side. On the other side, the Lion Tiger Saints, the Wooden Bell Spirit, and the others had also arrived. The people who had entered the door of the ancient god were divided into 2 groups. One group was Mulan Yu, Mulan Xiu, and the other saints and saintesses of the Mulan family. The other group was Yiguchen and the others, as well as the Lion Tiger Saints, the Wooden Bell Spirit, and the others. Yiguchen glanced at them. He recognized Mulan Yu and Mulan Xiu. The remaining members of the Mulan family added up to a dozen or so people. Among them, there were 2 people that caught Yiguchen's attention. They were a young man and a young woman. They had good looks, but there was a hint of arrogance. Although they didn't reveal their aura, Yiguchen could feel that the surging totemic power in their bodies had reached the level of a Triple Crown champion. 2 Triple Crown champions? Yiguchen thought to himself. As a barbarian clan, the Mulan family's foundation was indeed quite impressive. In addition, the remaining Mulan family members were at least double crown champions. Every one of them was stronger than the Stormy Wave Saint Sun. At this moment, the Triple Crown champion glanced at Shui Ruo and frowned. Get out of the way. This isn't a place for you. Shui Ruo's expression was a little awkward. She stood stiffly on the spot and lowered her gaze. Seeing this, Mulan Yu said, she's also a candidate to enter the door of the ancient god. What? Sister Yu, did I hear wrongly? This little girl isn't even a double crown champion. Her aura is also very weak. What right does someone like her have to occupy our Mulan family's slot? The woman said in a sharp voice. Her name was Mulan Fong. Her strength was ranked in the top 5 of the Mulan family. Because of this, she had developed an arrogant personality. Not to mention outsiders, even the Mulan family's disciples were reprimanded by her. Before Mulan Yu could say anything, the Baisher Saint took the opportunity to say, "Ha, that's all thanks to Dugu Wubai. He wanted to protect this person's slot. What right does he have to do that?" Mulan Fong looked at Yi Gu Chen with her beautiful eyes. It's because he said that as long as this little girl is allowed to join, Tuoba Shang will be handed over to him. The Black Tiger Saint sneered. Hearing this, Mulan Fong's expression froze. Then, she covered her mouth with her hand and laughed uncontrollably. Ridiculous. Too ridiculous. Mulan Fong only felt that it was ridiculous. How strong was Tuoba Shang after coming out of the life and death cave? She didn't know, but she knew that Tuoba Shang didn't need to spend much effort to deal with the Triple Crown champion. As for Dugu Wubai. Sorry, Mulan Fong had never heard of this name. Even if she knew that he was comparable to the Triple Crown champion, Mulan Fong didn't think that Yi Guchen could deal with Tuoba Shang. Beside Mulan Fong, the other Triple Crown champion, Mulan Sun, frowned and said, "Sister Yu, you've made a mistake this time." Just because of a ridiculous promise, he had wasted a precious spot. Mulan Fong and Mulan Sun both thought that Mulan Yu had lost her mind. Even their impression of Yi Guchen was extremely bad. "This is my decision," Mulan Yu said. She didn't have much confidence. After all, she was just giving Yi Guchen face. She didn't think that he could really deal with Tuoba Shang. However, this made Mulan Fong and Mulan Sun even more impatient with Yi Guchen. "I suggest that it's not too late to change the person now. Such a burden will only delay us," Mulan Fong said in a sharp tone. "I agree." Mulan Sun nodded. With the 2 Triple Crown champions taking the lead, the other members of the Mulan family looked at each other. Mulan Xiu opened his mouth slightly. He wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Shui Ruo lowered her head and didn't say a word. Yi Guchen glanced at Shui Ruo from the corner of his eye and saw tears seeping out of the corner of her eyes. After all, she was a 14 or 15-year-old girl. How could she not feel wronged after being humiliated like this? While Mulan Fong and the others were chattering, Yi Guchen took a step forward with an indifferent expression. "What do you mean by this?" Mulan Fong said coldly. "You don't agree with my decision?" Yi Guchen's tone was indifferent. "So what if I do?" Mulan Fong puffed out her chest fearlessly. Although she knew that Yi Guchen was the Triple Crown champion, she was also the Triple Crown champion. She was also the Triple Crown champion, so she wasn't afraid. "If you can make me take a step back, Shui Ruo and I will withdraw together." Yi Guchen's cold voice resounded through the crowd. He was tired of Mulan Fong and the others' arrogance and condescension. "You don't agree? I'll beat you until you do." Chapter 551. Yi Guchen's words reverberated throughout the entire area. Not only the people around him, but even Miranbo, the elders of the Mulan family, the Stormy Wave Saint, and the other saints who had failed the selection heard him. In the eyes of others, Yi Guchen was the perfect example of arrogance. Yi Guchen did not think that his attitude was arrogant because he did not take Mulan Fong and the others seriously. However, in the eyes of others, Yi Guchen was also a Triple Crown champion. How could he speak to Mulan Fong with such an attitude? Moreover, this was the Mulan family's territory. Challenging the Triple Crown champion of the Mulan family in their territory was simply courting death. Dugu Wubai, you've really lost your mind. The stormy wave saint was secretly delighted. He could not wait for Yi Guqin to lose his spot. That way, he would be able to replace him. Humph, what a joke. Why would Mulan Yue choose such an arrogant person? An elder of the Mulan family frowned and said coldly. Ha, this person is quite interesting. Mirambo did not mind and smiled faintly. On the other side, Mulan Fang could not believe her ears. She was so angry that she laughed and said, "Are you serious?" Yi Guqin did not say anything else. He calmly took a step forward, clearly prepared for battle. Dugu Wubai. Why don't we just forget about it? Mulan Yue sighed. She did not expect things to develop to this stage. She was very satisfied with Yi Guqin's performance in the 3 tests. Therefore, she did not want Yi Guqin to withdraw. Ha, Sister Yu, since this person is so confident, how can we let him down? Mulan Fang would not let this opportunity go. She wanted everyone to know that the Triple Crown champion of the barbarian family was not to be underestimated. Ha! In the next moment, Mulan Fang directly attacked. Dense totem power gathered in her palm and slammed it towards Yi Guqin's chest. If Yi Guqin didn't dodge this palm strike, he would be struck in the chest. Even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. It could be seen that Mulan Fang was really angry and wanted to teach Yi Guqin a lesson. Yi Guqin was expressionless as he watched Mulan Fang charge at him. He also stretched out a hand and clenched his 5 fingers into a fist. Vigorous and surging totem power gathered in his tendons and arms, and then fiercely blasted out. The air screeched violently as it collided with Mulan Fang's palm. At the moment of collision, the corner of Mulan Fang's mouth that had faintly curled into a cold and arrogant smile suddenly changed. The arrogant expression on his face changed completely. An incomparably vigorous force was transmitted from her palm, causing her entire arm to emit cracking sounds. Her entire arm bones seemed to be on the verge of shattering. Thud! 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 Mulan Fang retreated a dozen steps, her entire arm trembling slightly. This was after Yi Guqin held back a little because he was worried about the Mulan family. Otherwise, this punch would cripple Mulan Fang's entire arm. Silence. The surrounding Mulan family's disciples swallowed their saliva. One punch. With just one punch, the Triple Crown King Mulan Fang was forced to retreat. Everyone looked at Yi Guqin in unison, their eyes filled with bewilderment. Could it be that Mulan Fang held back? Those Mulan family's elders who were vaguely angry were also slightly stunned. Oh. Mulan Bua looked deeply at Yi Guqin. This Triple Crown King seemed to have some foundation. Xiao Fang, what are you doing? Why did you hold back? Just teach him a lesson. At the side, Mulan Xuan, who was also a Triple Crown King, frowned slightly. He subconsciously ignored Yi Guqin's strength and thought that Mulan Fang didn't use her full strength. Hearing this, Mulan Fang's face was full of shame and embarrassment, with some annoyance. Indeed, she didn't hold back. Her opponent was too strong. However, under such circumstances, she couldn't say it out loud. That would be too embarrassing. Where did this brat come from? Even Mulan Fang couldn't believe that she was forced to retreat with one punch. Xiao Fang, teach him a lesson. Mulan Xuan said. Mulan Fang took a deep breath and calmed down. She thought that she might have been too careless. Again. This time, Mulan Fang didn't hold back. She directly displayed the 3 great totems and her aura rose steadily. Mu King's seal. Mulan Fang shouted in a delicate voice. She formed a seal with her hands, and an ancient totem seal was formed in front of her. Then, the totem seal bombarded Yi Guqin. It's our Mulan family's unique skill, Mu King's seal. Many Mulan family's disciples couldn't help but exclaim. This martial skill was extremely powerful. They didn't expect Mulan Fang to display it in a sparring match. That's more like it. Mu Lanquan nodded slightly. He thought that Mu Lanfang was holding back just now. Now, she finally showed her true strength. Nonsense. Mu Lanquan's face darkened. It was just a sparring match. How could she display such a unique skill? However, facing such a powerful attack, Ye Guqin took a deep breath and secretly gathered the power of the ancestor totem in his body. Then, he added a trace of the power of the ancient god tactic. Suddenly, a terrifying power gathered in Ye Guqin's body and erupted like a volcano. One punch. Ye Guqin threw out another punch. However, the power of this punch was far stronger than before. Even the air was rippling with transparent ripples. Wherever the fist passed, the air would tremble. Bang! They exchanged blows again. Violent airwaves spread out in all directions. Compared to before, the commotion was much bigger. However, in the endless smoke, there was a scream. It was a woman's scream. Mu Lanquan's heart skipped a beat. Puff! Mu Lanfang's delicate body flew out like a rag doll. She spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, rolling in the dust. Mu Lanfang's face was covered in dust and her hair was disheveled. The whole place was silent. If it was said that Mu Lanfang had held back during the first exchange, what about this time? Who would dare to say that Mu Lanfang had held back when she used the Mu King's seal? At this moment, Mu Lanquan looked at Mu Lanfang in disbelief. She had used the Mu King's seal and still lost. Mu Lanfang's face was covered in dust and her face was red. She stared at Ye Guqin. She was angry. She was furious. She was the Triple Crown champion of the barbarian family. She was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. She was naturally more noble than ordinary barbarians. But now, in front of that indifferent young man from beginning to end, she was as insignificant as dust. Dugu Wubai, this is the Mulan family. How dare you treat me like this? Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to leave? Mu Lanfang couldn't hold it in anymore and screamed in anger. She couldn't win, so she started to use the Mulan family's name. The dragoness and the others were also worried. This was the Mulan family. Enough. At this moment, a deep and cold voice resounded in the whole place. Mu Lanfang's face froze when she heard the voice. Her body trembled like a quail. The person who spoke was the patriarch of the Mulan family, Mulan Bo. Chapter 552. Mirambo was the patriarch of the Mulan clan and a divine dwelling expert. It could be said that in the entire Mulan clan, apart from the elders of the previous generation who were in seclusion, Mirambo had the most authority. No one in the Mulan clan dared to go against Mirambo's decision. At this moment, Mu Lanbo walked over slowly and looked at Mu Lanfang with disappointment in his eyes. He didn't expect his junior disciple to be so unbearable. As the saying goes, you can lose but not lose. If you win, you have to win beautifully. If you lose, you have to lose decently. Mu Lanfang was like a shrew the moment she lost. She even started to use the Mulan clan's name to threaten others. It could be seen how narrow-minded she was. Even Mirambo, the patriarch, couldn't stand it anymore. Master. Seeing Mirambo, Mu Lanfang, who was still throwing a tantrum, instantly lowered her head and shivered all over. Mirambo's prestige in the Mulan clan was unmatched. You've really given the Mulan clan face. Mirambo said indifferently. But anyone could tell that he was being sarcastic. Patriarch, this person is too arrogant and doesn't put the Mulan clan in his eyes. Mu Lanfang was still quibbling. Do you think I'm blind? Mirambo frowned. Mu Lanfang was the one who was overbearing from the start. And Ye Guqin, if not for Mu Lanfang's overbearing attitude, he wouldn't have treated him with such an attitude. Mu Lanfang lowered her head and didn't dare to speak anymore. After returning from the Gate of the Ancient Gods, you'll be punished to enter the Mountain of Blades and Sea of Flames for half a year. The 5 elements divine item will be deducted for half a year, Mirambo said indifferently. Patriarch. Mulanfang was anxious, and her beautiful face turned pale. The Mountain of Blades and Sea of Flames was a place where the Mulan clan punished their clansmen. It was incomparably torturous. The most fatal punishment was that the 5 elements divine item would be deducted for half a year. This meant that Mulanfang wouldn't be able to obtain cultivation resources for half a year. This punishment was already extremely severe. Mulanxuan originally wanted to say a few words, but now he completely shut his mouth, afraid of being implicated. Mulanfang's face was dejected, and she was filled with regret. Her gaze towards Yiguchen was filled with resentment. But at the moment, she couldn't do anything to Yiguchen. Ha, little friend Dugu, my Mulan family has made a fool of themselves. Mulan Bo looked at Yiguchen and smiled faintly. Yiguchen nodded slightly. This Mulan family head is quite reasonable. It was also because of such a person that they were able to contend with the Tuoba family. I hope that little friend Dugu can help our Muran clan and you err in this door of the ancient god operation, Muran Bo said slowly. Of course. Yiguchen cupped his hands slightly. If you respect him, he will respect you tenfold. Next, after everyone made some preparations, they boarded the flying ship and prepared to head to the 5-element divine temple. Along the way, Mulanfang, Mulanxuan, and the others did not provoke Yiguchen. On the contrary, Mulanue became more and more curious about Yiguchen's strength. After all, Yiguchen was able to send Mulanfang flying with one punch. Not everyone had the strength to do so. Of course, Mulanue was not confident that she could defeat Yiguchen if she fought against Tuoba Shang. It took them several days to get there. In the entire land of 5 elements, not only the Mulan family, but also the Tuoba family and various large tribes were heading towards the depths of the land of 5 elements. After a few days, Yiguchen and the others had already reached the deepest part of the land of 5 elements. The deeper they went, the denser the aura of the Great Desolate Era became. Finally, another 2 days had passed. Yiguchen stood on the flying ship and looked around. There was a desolate plain in the distance. The ground was filled with ravines as if it was a battlefield left behind from ancient times. At the same time, there was a faint black aura between heaven and earth. It was like a demonic aura that made people feel uncomfortable. Yiguchen frowned slightly when he felt the faint black demonic aura. Because the ancient god's tactic in his body was involuntarily circulating. What is this aura? Why is it reacting to the ancient god's tactic? Yiguchen pondered. But he did not know much about this place, so he had no clue at the moment. At this moment, on the boundless plain, suddenly, a mountain appeared. It was an incomparably huge mountain. The whole mountain was divided into 5 colors, corresponding to metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The mountain was more than 10,000 feet high and towered into the sky. And on the top of the mountain, there was an incomparably simple and magnificent temple. The roof was glazed, the temple building, and there were many barbarian totems and stone pillars towering in the middle. It gave off an ancient and grand feeling. Is that the 5 elements temple? Yiguchen's eyes flickered. He could vaguely sense the obscure auras within the 5 elements divine temple. They were all incomparably powerful. There were many divine dwelling stage auras among them, like crouching dragons. As expected of the barbarian sacred land. Yiguchen sighed inwardly. There were probably no less than 10 divine dwelling experts in the 5 elements temple. It had far surpassed any of the 7 great forces. It was no wonder that the 7 great forces and the Saint Origin Empire had not been able to eradicate the barbarian race for so many years. Because the barbarian race's foundation was the 5 elements temple. Not long after, the flying boat carrying Yiguchen and the others also landed on the top of the mountain. Although the top of the mountain did not look big, but the mountain was huge. When the entire top of the mountain approached, it was more like a vast platform. Its area was probably enough to accommodate tens of thousands of people. After Yiguchin and the others landed on the top of the mountain, the dragon girl said, "This mountain is called the Five Elements Mountain, and is also the barbarian race's sacred mountain. The Five Elements Temple is located on the top of the mountain, standing proudly at the peak of the mountains." Even the dragon girl praised it, showing its status in the barbarian race. Yiguchin could not help but sigh. Mirambo led them to the gathering place. At the same time, other great tribes also arrived one after another. The Five Elements Barbarian Tribe, Soul Barbarian Tribe, Bone Barbarian Tribe and other great tribes all had many people come to watch the ceremony. Even Mo Tao of the Water Tribe had followed along. When he saw Yiguchin, resentment faintly flashed in his eyes. The reason he came was to see Yiguchin's miserable state of being crushed by Tuo Bashang. The other great tribes also had strange expressions on their faces when they saw the Mirambo family arrive. Among them, the Metal Tribe, Fire Tribe, Earth Tribe, Soul Barbarian Tribe and Bone Barbarian Tribe were the most shocked. Because they were in the Tuoba family's camp and belonged to the pro-war faction. The patriarchs of the Water Tribe, Wood Tribe, Barbarian Tribe and other great tribes all had a heavy expression. Because the Mirambo family's chances of winning were too low when the ancient god gate opened. When the Mirambo family was suppressed, the other great tribes would also be implicated. Among them, the patriarch of the Barbarian Tribe secretly glanced at the lion and tiger saints. Sensing the strange gazes around him, Mirambo's expression turned grave. Mulanue's eyes faintly revealed a worried expression. At this moment, another group of flying boats landed on the top of the mountain. The people of the Tuoba family's camp had arrived. Chapter 553. The Tuoba family's flying boats were much more numerous than the Muron family's. The head of the Tuoba family, Tuoba Outyen, stood proudly on the leading flying boat with an extraordinary aura. Beside him was a group of Tuoba family's disciples. The gray-haired Tuoba Shang with the aura of a tiger and wolf was naturally very eye-catching. Yiguchin also looked over. Compared to before, Tuoba Shang's aura was much stronger. Although he did not release it openly, the faint pressure made the saints and saintesses hold their breaths. There were many hideous scars on Tuoba Shang's body and face. It was obvious that he had gone through a hellish trial. Tuoba Shang is so strong. His aura is much stronger than before. Scary. I don't think I can even last one round against him. A double crown champion's face was slightly pale. On the Muron family's side, Mulanue and the others' faces were also a little gloomy. Tuoba Shang gave them too much pressure. However, Mulan Fang, Lion Tiger Two Saints, and the others who had a grudge against Yiguchin had a playful smile on their faces. After all, Yiguchin had said that he could leave Tuoba Shang to him. Big brother Dugu, this Tuoba Shang looks so scary. Shui Rua said worriedly. Don't worry. Yiguchin said indifferently. This was more interesting. Heh. Let's see how long you can pretend. Mulan Fang said in a low voice. Behind Tuoba Shang, there were more than 10 saints and saintesses of the Tuoba family. Their auras were extraordinary, and there were a few Triple Crown champions among them. On the flying boat, Yiguchin saw many old acquaintances. Lei Jiuyo, Golden Sun Saint Sun, Feng Xiaotian and the others were among them. Compared to the ancient desolate arena, Lei Jiuyo and the others' auras were much stronger now. Yiguchin knew that it was because of the life and death intent. However, the life and death intent was not that easy to refine. Otherwise, Lei Jiuyo and the others would have already reached the life and death chamber. Even so, the current strength of Lei Jiuyo and the others was no longer the same as before. Yiguchin would not make such a low-level mistake of underestimating the enemy. After glancing at Lei Jiuyo and the rest, Yiguchin fixed his gaze on a figure. It was a dark-skinned and skinny young man from the barbarian tribe. He stood in the middle of Lei Jiuyo and the others. He did not stand out, but his aura was not weaker than theirs. That's Mo Yi. Not far away, Mulanue noticed Yiguchin's attention and said. Yiguchen took a deep look at Mo Yi and nodded slightly. Interesting, with the arrival of the Tuoba family, the atmosphere outside the five-element temple suddenly became tense. After all, these two barbarian families represented two major camps of the barbarian race: the pro-war faction and the pacifist faction. As for the Five Elements Temple, it tended to be neutral. However, whichever side's juniors were more outstanding and powerful, the Five Elements Temple would naturally lean towards that side. If Tuoba Shang became the Five-Crown King, he would immediately receive the full support of the Five Elements Temple. At that time, the Mulan family would only be suppressed. However, it seemed that the Mulan family's situation was not good. "Ha, Mirambo, how have you been?" Tuoba Outyen seemed to be in a good mood. "Ha, Tuoba Outyen, looks like you've already walked out from your previous failure," Mirambo retorted. Tuoba Outyen's eyes immediately darkened when he heard that. Mirambo was referring to the ancient barbarian spiritual slaughtering array that Tuoba Shang activated in the ancient barbarian arena. If the mysterious Five-Crown King did not appear, the Tuoba family's plan would have succeeded. At that time, the Five Elements Temple would very likely lean towards the Tuoba family. However, it was still ruined by Five-Crown King. This matter made Tuoba Outyen extremely angry. What made him even angrier was that Tuoba Shang was defeated miserably by Five-Crown King. This caused a split within the Five Elements Temple. Some of the elders even wanted to find Five-Crown King. This was extremely disadvantageous to the Tuoba family. Therefore, everyone in the Tuoba family wanted to get rid of the mysterious Five-Crown King. As for Tuoba Shang, he directly entered the life and death cave to wash away his previous humiliation. "Humph, Mirambo, don't try to win a battle of words. The opening of the door of the ancient gods this time means that your Mirambo family is destined to lose everything," Tuoba Outyen said coldly. "Don't be too full of yourself. Otherwise, you'll be asking for humiliation," Mirambo said in a deep voice. "Ha, do you mean that your daughter, Muranya, can surpass Shang, her? Or is that Five-Crown King in your camp?" Tuoba Outyen sneered. Once those words were spoken, the patriarchs, elders, saints and saintesses all looked towards the Mirambo family. If that was the case, then the Tuoba family would not be in the picture. However, it was obvious that Tuoba Outyen was mocking them. Mirambo's expression was also ugly. The people of the Mirambo family all became silent. After all, Muranfang was also a member of the Mirambo family. She was somewhat embarrassed and could not help but mutter, "There is no Five-Crown King, but there is an ignorant fanatic." "Oh, who is it?" Tuoba Outyen's ears were very sharp. Muranfang's face twitched. She did not expect to be heard. The surrounding people's gazes all turned towards Muranfang. Who else? Isn't it him?" Muranfang was a little guilty as she pointed at Yiguchen. Yiguchen frowned. Muranfang wanted to make him the target of everyone. "It's you." At this moment, a voice full of anger suddenly sounded. The person who spoke was Yiguchen's defeated opponent, Tuoba Lai. Tuoba Lai was panting heavily. His eyes were slightly bloodshot. It was obvious that he was still brooding over the humiliation of being defeated by Yiguchen with a single punch. "Is that the dragon lady's husband? I heard that he's a Triple Crown King. He's so powerful that he easily defeated Tuoba Lai." Although the news about Yiguchen was not spread widely, there were still some people who heard about it. At this moment, their eyes were filled with shock. "Oh, interesting. I wonder how arrogant this little brother is," Tuoba Outyen said indifferently. He did not care at all. Muranfang sneered. She was not afraid of causing trouble for Yiguchen. She said, "What else? He said that he alone is enough to deal with Tuoba Shang." "What?" Muranfang's words stunned everyone. They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen such an arrogant person. Tuoba Shang, the Quadruple Crown King, was not someone who could be provoked by anyone. Not to mention the quadruple crown king, Tuoba Shang was now the strongest person among the younger generation of the barbarian tribe. Muranfang. Mirambo shouted in a deep voice. Muranfang immediately curled up. However, her gaze towards Yiguchen was filled with mockery and the joy of revenge. You have embarrassed me and will be punished by the tribe. I will make you the target of everyone and humiliate you. Muranfang thought happily. A trace of extreme coldness flashed past Yiguchen's eyes. He wanted Muranfang to pay the price for what she had done. However, as soon as he said those words, almost everyone in the surrounding looked at Yiguchen as if they were looking at an idiot. On the other hand, Tuoba Shang's expression was cold. He did not care about Yiguchen at all. He said coldly, "A frog at the bottom of the well does not know how big the sea is." In short, no matter what, Dugu Wubai's name would be spread throughout the barbarian tribe along with his ignorance and arrogance. Just as Yiguchen became the target of everyone. Within the Five Elements Temple, the sound of bells could be heard. A group of people slowly walked out of the Five Elements Temple. The person leading them was the great elder of the Five Elements Temple, Wan Yanlan. Chapter 554. The Elders Guild was in charge of the Five Elements Temple. The leader of the Elders Guild was the first elder, Wan Yanlan. Yiguchen glanced over. The first elder, Wan Yanlan, was wearing a simple gray robe. His face was wrinkled and his hair was white. He looked a little old. He held a dragon-headed walking stick in his hand and walked with a trembling gait. He looked old. But when Wan Yanlan walked outside the Five Elements Temple, all the barbarian people, including the masters of ancient barbarian families like Tuoba Outyen and Muran Bo, bowed respectfully. They did not dare to act rashly. The first elder, Wan Yanlan, was the pillar of the barbarian race. He had once followed the legendary Five Crown King and was now in charge of the Elders Guild of the Five Elements Temple. Although he rarely showed himself, his prestige in the barbarian race was unquestionable. Yiguchen's eyes grew solemn. He felt an extremely strong pressure from Wan Yanlan's body. The cultivation level of the first elder of the Five Elements Temple was most likely one of the top in the divine dwelling stage. No wonder he's the pillar of the barbarian race, Yiguchen thought. However, Yiguchen also felt a strong aura of old age from Wan Yanlan. It was obvious that the blood and chi of the strongest barbarian race expert had withered and his life force was exhausted. This kind of aging could not be made up for by quasi-saint medicines. Even if it was a saint medicine, it could only be temporarily delayed. It was likely that only by completely changing his bloodline could Wan Yanlan extend his life. At this moment, Wan Yanlan's gaze swept around and focused on Tuoba Shang. My bloodline has collapsed, but the successor Five Crown King has not appeared. Who will support the barbarian race in the future? Wan Yanlan sighed inwardly. In the Five Elements Temple, although there were divine dwelling experts like the Heaven Barbarian King, they were still weaker than him. If Wan Yanlan died, the Seven Great Forces and the Saint Origin Empire would definitely not let go of this opportunity. Therefore, Wan Yanlan was also eager to cultivate the next leader of the barbarian race. That was Five Crown King. He had always placed his hopes on Tuoba Shang. However, the appearance of the true Five Crown King successor made Wan Yanlan unusually happy. However, in the end, that Five Crown King was an enemy that was hard to predict. He was even opposing Tuoba Shang. This made Wan Yanlan extremely disappointed. Now that Five Crown King had disappeared, the barbarian race's only hope was placed on Tuoba Shang. I hope that Tuoba Shang will be able to obtain our ancestors' inheritance from the tomb of the gods and devils. Wan Yanlan sighed. Beside him stood a row of elders. One of the red-robed elders said, "Don't worry, Grand Elder. When the door of the ancient gods opens this time, Tuoba Shang will definitely not let you down and obtain the ancestors' inheritance." He was an elder of the Council of Elders, but he also had another identity. He was the supreme elder of the Tuoba family, an existence of the divine dwelling stage. Although his strength was far inferior to Wan Yanlan and the Heaven Barbarian King, he was still a divine-dwelling expert. As soon as he said that, a green-robed elder on the other side snorted disdainfully. The door of the ancient gods hasn't opened yet. It's not good for you to speak like that. The green-robed old man was the grand elder of the Mulan family. That's enough, Wan Yanlan said indifferently. He was already used to the confrontation between the elders of the two great families. But this time, if Tuoba Shang could really obtain the inheritance, he would most likely give the power to the Tuoba family. Everyone, the reopening of the door of the ancient gods is a grand occasion for the barbarian race. For the barbarian race to prosper, we need fresh blood from the younger generation. Back then, Lord Five Crown King appeared out of nowhere and shocked everyone. Everyone bowed down to him and he was invincible. Wan Yanlan's words made the blood of all the barbarian race people boil. So this time, I've decided that whoever can obtain the ancestors' inheritance in the door of the ancient gods and become the next Five Crown King will be the young king of the barbarian race. Wan Yanlan's words silenced the noisy atmosphere at the scene. Everyone's face was full of disbelief. What was a young king? It was a young king, which almost represented the next leader of the barbarian race. The Five Elements Temple would also fully support this young king. No matter what the young king's background was or what his identity was, as long as he could obtain the support of the Five Elements Temple, he would immediately become the most honorable existence in the barbarian race. The young king of the barbarian race was the most honorable. Boom! After the silence, there was an explosion. Endless clamor spread in all directions. Almost every saint and saintess of the barbarian race was excited and their faces were flushed red. That was a young king. It was more honorable than the double crown king, the triple crown king, or the quadruple crown king. The young king even had the power to control the will of the Five Elements Temple. It could be said that whoever could become the young king would be the one who unified the barbarian race. Tuoba Shang's muscles tensed up and his eyes shone with a dazzling light. Wasn't that what he was after? He wanted to become a king and lead the barbarian race to conquer the world. This time, I'll be the young king. Tuoba Shang's tone was resolute. The eyes of Lei Jilyo, Golden Sun Saint, and the others were also shining. Although Tuoba Shang was like a mountain, they still had a chance. Especially after comprehending the life and death essence, their cultivation had become stronger than before. On the Mulan family's side, everyone was excited. Who didn't want to be the young king? Yi Guqin was the calmest. He didn't care about power, let alone the power of the barbarian race. He was only here for the sacred medicine and the ancient god's opportunity. As for the young king, Yi Guqin didn't have any thoughts about it. Looking at the excited crowd, Wan Yanlan nodded slightly. Next, I'll open the door of the ancient god, Wan Yanlan said. Everyone followed Wan Yanlan and the other elders into the Five Elements Temple. The Five Elements Temple was grotesque and variegated. It was filled with a wild, ancient, and mysterious aura. As soon as Yi Guqin entered, he felt a sense of familiarity. It was the aura of the ancient god. As expected. Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. At the same time, Yi Guqin also felt a faint demonic aura. The demonic aura was the same as the one Yi Guqin had felt around the Five Elements Mountain. As for this demonic chi, it seemed to be incompatible with the ancient god's aura, and it seemed to be at odds with him. Yi Guqin didn't know much about the secrets of the barbarian race. He could only take one step at a time. In the end, everyone came to the center of the Five Elements Temple. There was a vast and dark hole in the center of the temple. Yi Guqin was slightly surprised. The Five Elements Mountain was hollow like a volcano. The door of the ancient god is at the bottom of the mountain, the dragon lady said softly. Wan Yanlan and the other elders led everyone down the stairs at the edge of the hole. After walking for a long time, they finally arrived at the bottom. They were surrounded by colorful lights. They were all strange minerals and stones. In the center of the ground, there was a thick stone door that was almost 100 feet tall. It was simple and majestic. Is this the door of the ancient god? Yiguchen sighed. Chapter 555. Yiguchen couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. What he saw before him was simply too shocking. Within the enormous Five Elements mountain, there was 100-meter-tall stone door that exuded an ancient and desolate aura. This scene was incomparably shocking. Not only Yiguchen, but most of the people present who had never seen the door of the ancient god were also shocked. Even those who were fortunate enough to see it once or twice couldn't help but exclaim in surprise when they saw it again. This was the relic left behind by the barbarian tribe's ancestors, the door of the ancient god. It's a 100-meter-tall door. Could it really be used by the ancient gods? Yiguchen recalled the towering figure of the ancient god standing on the desolate land. He felt that this door was made for the ancient gods. How could mortals use such a huge door? Everyone, the true barbarian tribe warriors have been tempered by blood and fire. Therefore, killing is not forbidden in the door of the ancient god. You can just attack, Wan Yanlan said loudly. Hearing this, the eyes of the people who were about to enter the door of the ancient god turned cold. The identity of the young king was too tempting. If it was before, they would have some scruples because of their identity. For example, even if Lei Jiuliu and the others could kill the members of the Mulan family, they wouldn't really kill them because they were afraid of the Mulan family. However, it was different now. If they succeeded, they would become the young king. There was no need to care about the Mulan family. Of course, the most promising candidate to become the young king was Tuo Bashang. Door of the ancient god, open. Everyone saw Wan Yanlan and the other elders of the Five Elements divine temple surrounding the door of the ancient god and releasing their totem power. There were the 5 totem powers of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. At this moment, the 5 divine beasts' ancient jade in Yiguchen's origin ring suddenly trembled. This. Yiguchen's eyes were filled with doubt. The 5 divine beasts' ancient jade was obtained at the same time as the 5-colored golden core. Yiguchen didn't know what use the 5 divine beasts' ancient jade had. It seemed to be an ordinary ancient jade. However, it seemed that it had something to do with the door of the ancient god. Boom! Following the ceremony of Wan Yanlan and the others, the door of the ancient god, which seemed to have been silent since ancient times, also started to rumble and tremble. On the stone door, various ancient totems, symbols, and runes were emitting rays of light. Inside the door of the ancient god, the fog tumbled and the space shook, setting off waves of fluctuations. You can enter. Wan Yanlan said. The Tuoba family, the Mulan family, and the foreign aide that they had recruited were all standing in front of the ancient gods. The divine condor did not follow Yiguchen because demonic beasts were not allowed in the door of the ancient gods. Yiguchen, Mulanue should have already said that there are some dangerous places inside the gate of the ancient god. They are filled with a special kind of demonic energy. If you absorb too much of it, you will go crazy and become an ape-like existence. You have to be careful. Dragoness lowered her voice. Yiguchen nodded slightly. Mulanue had mentioned it before. He had already sensed the demonic energy. However, it was obviously not effective outside the door of the ancient god. Inside the door of the ancient god, however, it was so dense that it was fatal and could drive people crazy. In the next moment, everyone who had entered the door of the ancient god stepped into it. Yiguchen suddenly felt that the world was spinning, as if the space was twisting. After a moment, it also seemed like a long time. When Yiguchen opened his eyes again, he saw an ancient land. Ravines crisscrossed, and it was extremely dilapidated, as if it was pieced together by countless fragments of the earth. Is this the space inside the door of the ancient god? Yiguchen looked around. He did not see anyone else around him. It was obvious that the space twisting just now had scattered these people in all directions. Inside the door of the ancient god was a special space secret realm, similar to the Void Sword realm. However, Yiguchen could clearly feel that the door of the ancient god was much older than the Void Sword realm. After all, the existence of the ancient god clan had far exceeded Yiguchen's imagination. According to Mulanue, although this place is not small, it is not big either. Yiguchen's eyes flickered. Before entering, Mulanue had already warned them. After entering the door of the ancient god, if there were no other opportunities, they could directly go into the deepest part of the tomb of the gods and demons. This was because the greatest opportunity in the door of the ancient god, the bloodline inheritance of the ancestors, was in the tomb of the gods and demons. It seems that the opportunity of the ancient god is in the tomb of the gods and demons. I wonder if the sacred medicine is also in there. Yiguchen secretly guessed. His primary goal was the sacred medicine. Secondly, the opportunity of the ancient god's inheritance. After thinking about it, Yiguchen also rushed toward the deepest part of the tomb of the gods and demons. After about 2 hours, the ravines in front of them suddenly bulged, and a valley could be vaguely seen. There was a burst of spiritual medicine fragrance coming from it. Yiguchen's eyes narrowed, and without hesitation, he flashed away. Although the tomb of the gods and demons was the greatest place of opportunity in the door of the ancient god, but there were also many other places of treasure scattered everywhere. That valley, could it be the Valley of 10,000 Medicine? Yiguchen thought. Mulanue had already told Yiguchen and the others some places before. The Valley of 10,000 Medicine was a treasure place full of spiritual medicine inside the door of the ancient god. And because the door of the ancient god was rarely opened, the spiritual medicine in the Valley of 10,000 Medicine was also rarely picked. There were all kinds of precious medicine, and there was no lack of quasi-sacred medicine. I wonder if there are any sacred medicines in there. Yiguchen thought, and without hesitation, he directly turned into an afterimage and rushed over. In the Valley of 10,000 Medicine, there was a burst of fragrance, and spiritual medicine was everywhere. There was even no lack of precious medicine. If it were in the outside world, it would definitely be picked clean in a short time. But because it was inside the door of the ancient god, it was preserved. Yiguchen casually glanced at it and did not care, continuing to go deeper. He had the bronze cauldron, and ordinary precious medicine was not important to him. Only quasi-sacred medicine and sacred medicine would pay attention to it. Not long after, Yiguchen went deep into the Valley of 10,000 Medicine. There were fewer and fewer precious medicines around, but the quality was getting higher. At this moment, a delicate voice suddenly came from afar. "You are joining hands, aren't you shameless?" Hearing this voice, Yiguchen's eyes flashed with a dark light. He went forward and saw a girl with green hair and green eyes being besieged by 2 people. The girl was the wooden bell spirit. And of the 2 people besieging her, one was covered in blood armor and looked ferocious. The other person was a Triple Crown champion of the Tuoba family. Looking at this situation, the wooden bell spirit seemed to be in an extremely passive situation. Well, the one in blood armor should be the Blood Bone Saint of the Bone Barbarian tribe, and the Triple Crown champion should be Tuoba Tian of the Tuoba family. Mulanue had already told Yiguchen the names and characteristics of everyone in the Tuoba family camp. Therefore, Yiguchen was able to recognize him at a glance. The Blood Bone Saint of the Bone Barbarian tribe was not weak, comparable to the Triple Crown champion. Tuoba Tian was also one of the best among the Triple Crown champions. No wonder the wooden bell spirit was forced to this point. But since Yiguchen saw it, he did not mind helping it. Boom! Without hesitation, Yiguchen directly attacked. Divine power surged, and his aura surged. Duguwubai. Seeing this, the wooden bell spirit's eyes flashed with joy. The Blood Bone Saint and Tuoba Tian's faces darkened. Chapter 556. With a hong sound, the wooden bell spirit blasted out with an attack, leaving the battlefield and joining up with Yiguchen. On the other side, the Blood Bone Saint and Tuoba Tian stood together. Yiguchen looked around and suddenly found a gully not far away. Light shot into the sky and medicine fragrance filled the air. Smelling it made people feel like they were floating in the air. Saint-level medicine. Yiguchin said. That aura was at least from a saint-level medicine. Even a supreme treasure medicine couldn't release that kind of aura. Yes, I'm from the wood race and have the sky-reaching ancient tree. I can sense the aura of all kinds of herbs, so I followed it here. Who would have thought that these two would secretly follow me and want to take the fruits of my labor? The wooden bell spirit's face was angry. Oh. Yiguchin didn't expect the wooden bell spirit to have this kind of ability. This way, the wooden bell spirit could help when they found the saint-level medicine. But he still had to solve the problem at hand. Humph, the blood-bone saint said coldly. The treasure inside the door of ancient God can be obtained by whoever is stronger. Are you still so naive? Beside him, Tuoba Tian glanced at Yiguchin and said, You're that arrogant and ignorant Duguwubai. You actually want to fight brother Tuoba Shang. Don't think that you're invincible just because you defeated Tuoba Lai. Tuoba Tian's tone sounded like he didn't care about Tuoba Lai. Even though they were both triple champions, there was still a gap between their abilities. You talk as much nonsense as Tuoba Lai, Yiguchin said indifferently. You're looking for death. Tuoba Tian shouted coldly. The totem power in his body erupted like a volcano. Yiguchin measured it and found that his totem power was indeed much stronger than Tuoba Lai's. Sky-breaking golden claw. Tuoba Tian attacked. His palm curled like an eagle's claw, shooting out golden light. It streaked across the air and made a hissing sound. This move originated from one of his 3 supreme totems, the golden-feathered godly eagle. The totem power in Yiguchin's body surged, and the aura around him surged. He did not use any divine weapons or techniques, but directly punched out. The combination of the impeccable Vajra body and the ancient divine art allowed Yiguchin's physical body to be able to take on mystical pattern divine weapons head-on. Although Tuoba Tian's move was powerful, it was still unable to shatter the mystical rune divine weapon. Boom! When the two collided, a shocking shockwave burst forth. Tuoba Tian's expression changed slightly when he felt the huge force coming from his palm. He retreated more than a dozen steps before he was able to dissipate the huge force. Your physical body. Tuoba Tian's tone was grave as he stared at Yiguchin. There was actually someone capable of taking on his attack with their physical body. This had truly surpassed his expectations. Yiguchin didn't reply. Instead, he stepped forward and attacked again. At the same time, Yiguchin was also sensing the changes in the 5 elements Tao. Comprehending the changes between the 5 elements through actual combat was clearly easier to comprehend the true essence. However, with the concealment of the wave illusion secret technique, Yiguchin's methods were well hidden. Before he obtained the divine medicine, Yiguchin could not reveal his identity. On the other side, the wooden bell spirit also took out the towering ancient tree and fought with the blood-bone saint. The blood-bone saint's totem was a blood-red mastiff. Although it was a mastiff, its body was no different from a lion, and its aura was terrifying. However, the wooden bell spirit used softness to overcome strength. The towering ancient tree shook, and countless vines spread out like a spider web, binding the blood-red mastiff. A huge battle erupted in the Valley of 10,000 Medicine. Little did they know that this shockwave had spread to the deepest part of the Valley of 10,000 Medicine. In a hidden and dark cave, a pair of eyes slowly opened in the darkness. Has the door of the ancient gods opened again? Boom! 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 Continuous air blasts and explosions resounded throughout the Valley of 10,000 Medicine. Damn it! After another attack, Tuoba Tian retreated quickly, and his bones seemed to be trembling. The way he looked at Yiguchin was no longer filled with disdain and contempt. Instead, it was replaced by a faint fear. That's right. In his eyes, Yiguchin was no longer a human, but an ancient beast in human form. Not many people, even among the barbarians who were good at refining their bodies, could possess such strength and physical strength. His moves could not cause much harm to Yiguchin. However, every time Yiguchin attacked, he would be injured. Tuoba Tian began to think of retreating. Seeing this, Yiguchen's eyes flashed, and he attacked again. In his body, the five-colored totem power kept circulating, turning into something like a disc outside his body. It was still circling, and rich five elements power spread out. Of course, under the cover of the wave illusion secret skill, Tuoba Tian did not feel the five totem powers. However, this power was indeed the superposition of the five totems. It's over. Yiguchen activated the five-colored roulette and threw it at Tuoba Tian. No. Tuoba Tian's eyes were bloodshot, and he felt a sense of danger. Three Kings Battle Seal. Tuoba Tian roared, and the three supreme totems were displayed at the same time, each forming a seal. Then, the three seals overlapped, and the power suddenly increased by 3 times. However, even so, it could not compare to the superposition of the five totems. When the two attacks collided, the five elemental will destroyed the three kings battle seal as easily as crushing dry weeds. Then, without losing any momentum, it struck Tuoba Tian. Boom! There was an explosion, and Tuoba Tian's body exploded into pieces. On the other side, Blood Bone Saint and Wooden Bell Spirit were dumbfounded. A Triple Crown champion died just like that? That was too easy. Gulp, the Blood Bone Saint swallowed hard and retreated without hesitation. He wanted to run for his life. Do you think you can escape? Yiguchen took out the wings of the rosefinch and flapped them. Then, he turned into a flaming meteor and caught up with Blood Bone Saint. It didn't take long for Yiguchen to return. He looked relaxed. Wooden Bell Spirit was still in a daze. Although she no longer underestimated Yiguchen, Yiguchen's performance was still beyond her expectations. Could it be that what he said earlier about being able to deal with Tuoba Shang by himself was true? Wooden Bell Spirit couldn't help but have this thought. Almost everyone thought that Yiguchen was boasting, arrogant, and ignorant. But now, it seemed that it was not impossible. Thinking of this, the Wooden Bell Spirit could not help but respect Yiguchen. Thank you for saving me. Wooden Bell Spirit nodded. You're welcome. Let's go take a look, Yiguchen said. The two of them walked to the ravine where the light and divine splendor gathered. There were indeed countless supreme-grade elixirs. The most eye-catching thing was that 4 of the elixirs were quasi-divine elixirs. There are 4 quasi-divine elixirs. Wooden Bell Spirit's green eyes were filled with joy. Yiguchen was slightly disappointed. There were no divine elixirs here. But then again, if the Valley of 10,000 Medicine had any divine elixirs, they would have been picked long ago. On the other hand, no one could enter the tomb of the gods and demons, even though the gate of the ancient gods had been opened many times. The possibility of having divine elixirs was much higher than the Valley of 10,000 Medicine. So we can only go to the tomb of the gods and demons? Yiguchen sighed. But it wasn't that he didn't gain anything. Because Yiguchen had his eyes on one of the 4 quasi-divine elixirs. It was a lotus-like quasi-divine elixir floating in a pool of spirit chi. The lotus was called the Soul Extradition Lotus, and its quality was extremely high. It was almost at the level of a divine elixir. Moreover, the Soul Extradition Lotus was very beneficial for the cultivation of soul power. Yiguchen didn't forget that he still had to cultivate the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. The 3rd tribulation, the soul tribulation of the Sea of Consciousness, required soul nourishment in addition to tempering the soul flame. The Soul Extradition Lotus was undoubtedly the best choice. I only want this. Yiguchen pointed at the Soul Extradition Lotus. Wooden Bell Spirit nodded slightly. The Soul Extradition Lotus was the highest quality among the 4 quasi-divine elixirs. But the other 3 were not bad either. Moreover, without Yiguchen, Wooden Bell Spirit might not even be able to keep its life, let alone obtain the divine elixir. Just as Yiguchen and Wooden Bell Spirit were about to pick the divine elixir, a sharp voice rang out. Not bad, there is such a quasi-divine elixir here. You have done well. A figure walked over slowly, swaying its hips. When Yi Guqin saw this, his eyes darkened. Chapter 557. The newcomer was none other than Mu Lanfang. On Mu Lanfang's beautiful face, there was a joyful smile. Looking at the 4 quasi-divine herbs, her eyes narrowed into slits. Mu Lanfang, why are you here? The wooden bell spirit was confused for a moment, then suddenly thought of something. Gritting her teeth, she said, have you been hiding behind us? Facing the wooden bell spirit's question, Mu Lanfang's expression froze. Then she said firmly, no, I just came here by chance and happened to see you. Happened to see? The wooden bell spirit's face darkened as she clenched her fists. Mu Lanfang didn't come when she was surrounded by Tuoba Tian and the others. But now, Mu Lanfang happened to come when she was about to pick the quasi-divine herbs. Who would believe that? I think you've been following the wooden bell spirit and even Tuoba Tian's group. You didn't appear because you weren't confident in defeating them. Now that the danger is over, you want to pick the fruits of your labor, right? Yi Guqin said coldly. Wh. What? Dugu Wubai, you can't slander me like that. Mu Lanfang's eyes flashed. She dodged slightly but still said firmly. Seeing her attitude, the wooden bell spirit completely understood. When she was surrounded, Mu Lanfang had been hiding in the dark. But because Tuoba Tian and the Blood Bone Saint were powerful, Mu Lanfang had no choice. Mu Lanfang knew that even if she attacked, she wouldn't have a high chance of winning. Therefore, she kept hiding and watched as the wooden bell spirit was besieged without any intention of making a move. Mu Lanfang only showed up when Yi Guqin came and finished off the enemies. The wooden bell spirit looked at Mu Lanfang with undisguised disgust and contempt. Mu Lanfang had been so arrogant before. But now, she could hide like a turtle whenever she met someone slightly more powerful. She didn't even help. She was so shameless that she dared to show up now to get a share. Mu Lanfang's face was a bit red, but she looked at the 4 quasi-divine herbs with a burning gaze. She said, forget it. Since we're on the same side, I only want the soul-transferring lotus and the golden caltrip fruit. You can each have one of the other 2 quasi-divine herbs. Mu Lanfang's tone was indifferent, as if she had given him a huge advantage. Mu Zhong was so angry that she laughed, and her delicate body was trembling. Yi Guqin turned a blind eye to it and kept the soul extraction lotus into his origin ring. When the wooden bell spirit saw this, it also put the other 3 quasi-saint herbs into its bag. You are. Mu Lanfang was stunned for a moment. Then, a threatening cold light shot out from her eyes. Do you have any objections? Yi Guqin asked calmly. Humph, the reason why you were able to enter the gate of the ancient god was because my Mulan family gave you this quota out of charity. Now, you actually don't want to repay us and want to take the opportunity for yourselves. Mu Lanfang's tone was overbearing. It was as if the wooden bell spirit and Yi Guqin were unpardonable evils. Mu Zhongling was so angry that her pretty face turned green. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. In the next moment, he moved his feet and appeared in front of Mu Lanfang in a flash. His speed was so fast that even Mu Lanfang could not dodge in time. What are you doing? Mu Lanfang screamed. Pa! A heavy slap landed on Mu Lanfang's face. Mu Lanfang's delicate body flew backward. Her pretty face was swollen like a steamed bun and a few of her teeth were broken. Mu Lanfang was stunned. She did not know what to do. She was humiliated by Yi Guqin again. Looking at Mu Lanfang, who seemed to be in a daze, Yi Guqin said coldly, first of all, my quota was not given out by you. Secondly, what I gave you was your life. The word life caused Mu Lanfang's delicate body to tremble. She looked at Yi Guqin with hatred, but at the same time, there was a trace of fear in her eyes. It was just as Yi Guqin said. If she was not a member of the Mulan family, if it was not for Mulan Yue and Mulan Bua, if Yi Guqin wanted to kill Mu Lanfang, it would be too easy. He would never be merciful to women. He did not have the pedantic idea of not killing women. Xia Yubing, Pan Shuoyan, any woman who offended him, Yi Guqin would not be merciful. When Mu Lanfang was outside the Five Elements Temple, she made everyone target him and laugh at him. This made Yi Guqin want to kill her. If it was not for Mu Lanbua and Mu Lanyue, Yi Guqin would have gotten rid of her long ago. You better cherish the life I gave you. Yi Guqin was as cold as ice. For some reason, Mu Lanfang's delicate body trembled as she looked at those indifferent eyes. Although she was unwilling, she still covered her swollen face and left in a sorry state. The wooden bell spirit was also surprised by Yi Guqin's resolute methods. He had outstanding strength and a resolute personality. The wooden bell spirit felt that the young man in front of it was not an ordinary person. Moreover, this time in the door of the ancient god, fighting for the young king position. The young man in front of it might have a chance. Thinking of this, the wooden bell spirit was even more determined. It must not provoke Yi Guqin. Instead, it must be on good terms with him. This matter is over. Let's leave, the wooden bell spirit said. She actually felt a sense of security when she was with Yi Guqin. At least Yi Guqin would not be like Mu Lanfang, leaving her in the lurch. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. Just as he was about to leave. Suddenly, there was a slight fluctuation in his mind, as if someone was whispering beside him. This. Yi Guqin's footsteps paused slightly, and his expression froze. What's wrong? The wooden bell spirit in front came back to her senses and asked in confusion. Wait for me here, Yi Guqin said. Then, he turned around and walked toward the rugged area in the depths of the Valley of 10,000 Medicines. The wooden bell spirit was even more confused. She was from the Wood clan and had a natural affinity with the wood attribute. In the deeper part of the Valley of 10,000 Medicine, she did not sense the aura of spirit herbs, so Yi Guqin naturally could not go looking for spirit herbs. On the other side, Yi Guqin went into the deepest part of the Valley of 10,000 Medicine. There were no more spirit herbs here, and there were very few people. The voice in my mind should be in front. Yi Guqin looked ahead. Suddenly, he found that there was a hidden cave in a green mountain wall covered by vines. Seeing this, Yi Guqin carefully entered the cave. The cave was extremely dark, but the spirit energy was unexpectedly vigorous, as if there was a giant beast swallowing the spirit energy of heaven and earth here. Who made that voice? Yi Guqin thought to himself as he moved forward. Moreover, that voice did not alarm the wooden bell spirit. Obviously, it was only transmitted to him. Finally, Yi Guqin was about to reach the deepest part of the cave. At this time, in the darkness, a pair of bright eyes suddenly opened. Boy, come here. An old voice suddenly came out. Accompanied by a loud explosion, a giant hand condensed from true energy directly grabbed Yi Guqin. This is true energy. Yi Guqin's figure retreated quickly, his eyes full of surprise. The barbarians all used the power of totems and almost never cultivated true energy. However, this giant hand of true energy was obviously not the means of a barbarian powerhouse. Come here. The old woman's voice shouted again, and the giant hand of true energy directly wrapped around Yi Guqin. What vigorous true energy! The hidden latch of life and death, the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth, or... Yi Guqin was bound by the giant hand of true energy. He frowned and blamed himself for being too careless. After Yi Guqin was bound, in the darkness, the bright eyes slowly approached. In the end, the figure in the darkness was finally revealed in front of Yi Guqin. You are, even with Yi Guqin's temperament, when he saw the figure, his face could not help but freeze, and he was stunned. Chapter 558. It was easy to imagine that even someone like Yi Guqin would reveal such a look of astonishment. Because the one who had walked out from the darkness was a little girl. Yes, she looked like a 7 or 8-year-old girl. In fact, she was even a little younger than Shui. The little girl was petite and dainty. She was dressed in colorful muslin, and her eyes were bright and her teeth were white. Her glossy jet-black hair was tied into 2 pigtails at the back of her head. However, her large eyes seemed to contain the vicissitudes of life, and her voice was far from the crisp and clear voice of a girl her age. Instead, it was unusually old and hoarse. Most importantly, the little girl's cultivation had far exceeded Yiguchin's expectations. Divine Dwelling Stage. Yiguchin was all too familiar with the aura of an expert of this level. However, the little girl in front of him was only 7 or 8 years old. A 7 or 8-year-old Divine Dwelling Stage expert, was it possible? Even if she had started cultivating in her mother's womb, it was almost impossible. It went against common sense. If the hall masters and palace masters of the 7 great factions saw this little girl, they would be ashamed to death. Their cultivation had all been for nothing. Suspicious. Too suspicious. Yiguchin stopped struggling after being bound by the giant chi hand, and began to size up the cute little girl. I told you to come here, do you still think you can escape? The little girl laughed coldly, causing Yiguchin to feel a little creeped out. Her delicate and cute appearance, her old and hoarse voice, as well as her old-fashioned tone, when put together, seemed incomparably out of place, causing one's hair to stand on end. What, do you also think I'm a monster? The little girl raised her little face slightly, revealing an incomparably sweet smile to Yiguchin. However, that smile seemed somewhat twisted. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been frightened out of their wits. However, with Yiguchin's temperament, how could he allow himself to be flustered? I wouldn't dare. I didn't expect to see a Divine Dwelling Stage elder in the door of the ancient gods. Yiguchin's tone was indifferent. There wasn't the slightest bit of strangeness or fear in Yiguchin's eyes. A glint flashed across the girl's eyes. Yours truly had not expected that I would be able to see the geniuses of the 7 major factions within the door of the ancient gods. You are truly incredible. The little girl said. Senior, you know that I'm from one of the 7 major forces? Yiguchin raised his eyebrows slightly. He felt that he had concealed his aura very well. Of course. Although I can sense the totem power in your body, the aura of your true energy is unable to escape my eyes, said the girl. May I know Senior's name? Yiguchin asked. Although the mysterious girl had exposed Yiguchin's identity, she didn't seem to have much killing intent in her words, so Yiguchin wasn't too afraid. This consort? Ha, I am the master of the Rhinoceros Divine Palace, 100 Flowers Child. The girl named 100 Flowers Child said. What? Yiguchin was really surprised this time. He did not expect that this little girl was the legendary mysterious palace lord of the Rhinoceros Divine Palace. The external affairs of the Rhinoceros Divine Palace had always been led by Grandma Shichuan. The palace lord of the Rhinoceros Divine Palace had not appeared for a long time. Otherwise, the Zither fairy would not have been oppressed by Grandma Shichuan. However, Yiguchin did not expect that the palace lord, who seemed to have disappeared from the world, would actually appear within the door of the ancient gods. This was somewhat inconceivable. What? You don't believe me? 100 Flowers Child's tone was slightly serious. Of course not. I'm just a little surprised. I am Yiguchin, a disciple of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest. Yiguchin also revealed his identity as a sign of trust. Sword Sect, Ta Lin. You're a disciple of Yen Changgu, huh? But you sure are bold. You actually managed to enter the land of berserkers alone and even managed to enter the gate of the ancient gods, 100 Flowers Child said while casting a glance at Yiguchin. She had snuck into the door of the ancient gods a long time ago, and Yiguchin was a prodigy who had only recently risen to prominence. Therefore, 100 Flowers Child did not know much about Yiguchin. Senior, may I ask why you have summoned me? Yiguchin asked. 100 Flowers Child stared at Yiguchin, and the giant hand made of Jinqi suddenly spread out. Yiguchin landed on the ground. Do you know why I am here? 100 Flowers Child asked faintly. Yiguchin was silent. Hundred Flowers Child continued, to be honest, I have a special physique and suffer from a special disease. You have seen it for yourself. I look like a girl, and I will never be able to grow up. I am imprisoned in this childish body. Hundred Flowers Child's tone became even more serious as she spoke. Yiguchin sighed inwardly. For ordinary women, it might be a dream to forever remain young and beautiful. But if she kept the appearance of a 7- or 8-year-old girl, it would be torture, and she would not be able to fall in love with anyone. If it were anyone else who saw Hundred Flowers Child, who looked so different from her age, they would most likely be shocked and call her a monster. Therefore, Yiguchin could somewhat understand Hundred Flowers Child's thoughts. So I tried my best to cure my disease. Finally, I learned that there might be a sacred medicine in the door of the barbarian race's ancient gods, the reverse origin fruit. Reverse origin fruit? Yiguchin asked. Yes, the reverse origin fruit is a relatively ancient sacred medicine. It is very difficult to find, but it happens to be useful for my disease. I hid my identity and cultivation, and barely managed to sneak into the door of the ancient gods. But I did not expect that the reverse origin fruit could only be in the tomb of the gods and demons. No one in the barbarian race has been able to step into the depths of the tomb of the gods and demons, including me. If I reveal my cultivation, I will immediately be discovered by the people of the Five Elements Temple. Therefore, I hid here, waiting for someone to enter the tomb of the gods and demons. But those juniors of the barbarian race are all clumsy and no one can enter the tomb. Hundred Flowers Child said with a trace of helplessness. She could see a treasure mountain but could not enter. This feeling was quite tormenting. Senior, you want me to enter the tomb of the gods and demons and help you get the reverse origin fruit? Yiguchin asked. In fact, he did not want to get involved in this mess. That was because Yiguchin himself had many goals. He wanted to obtain the sacred medicine for healing and also explore the opportunities of the ancient gods. If he also wanted to help Hundred Flowers Child get the reverse origin fruit, the variables would obviously be greater. As if she saw the hesitation in Yiguchen's eyes, Hundred Flower Child said, since you've snuck into the door of the ancient gods, you obviously have a request for the tomb of the fiend gods. Could it be that you've never thought about the consequences if your identity is exposed? Yiguchen's expression changed slightly. He did not think that Hundred Flowers Child would expose him. But if there was a big battle in the tomb of the gods and demons, the identity of Five Crown King would be exposed. At that time, if Wan Yanlan and the other elders investigated seriously, it would not be difficult to discover Yiguchen's identity. Of course, that was the worst-case scenario. I can promise you that if you can help me get the reversal origin fruit, then I will think of a way to bring you out of the land of berserkers safely. In fact, I will even owe you a favor. If you need it in the future, I will definitely not be stingy in helping you, Granny Hundred Flowers said. The reason why she did this was because she was too eager to recover from her illness. And this time, the door of the ancient gods was undoubtedly the most likely opportunity to open the tomb of the gods and demons. If she missed it, she would continue to wait and suffer. Yiguchen's eyes flashed. Hundred Flowers Child was the master of the Rhino Divine Palace and a divine dwelling stage expert. This favor was not small. And if he had a divine dwelling stage expert to protect him, his safety would be greatly increased. Alright, I'll help you with this. Yiguchen agreed. Chapter 559. In any case, Yiguchen was going to enter the tomb of the fiend gods. If he could find the reverse source fruit, he could help Hundred Flowers Child. Moreover, it would only be beneficial for Yiguchen to obtain a favor from a divine dwelling expert. Okay, I'll believe you this time. Of course, if you disobey or do anything else, don't blame me for being ruthless. Hundred Flowers Child's tone suddenly turned gloomy. An extreme killing intent shrouded Yiguchen. It was obvious that the reverse source fruit was Hundred Flowers Child's only hope of recovery. If Yiguchen did anything unexpected, even 10,000 deaths would not be able to extinguish her anger. For such a sweet-looking little girl to say such words in such a tone, it had to be said that there was a strange sense of incongruity. But Yi Guqin's expression remained unchanged. He nodded, "Of course, my words carry enormous weight. Moreover, I have some connections with Consonant's palace." Yi Guqin casually told Hundred Flowers' Child about the relationship between Zither Fairy and LV Qinghan. "Oh, so you're on good terms with Zither Fairy. But I didn't expect that Zhou Tong would be so bold as to kill my disciple." Hundred Flower Child's face darkened even more as an astonishing killing intent was released. LV Qinghan was Hundred Flowers Child's proudest disciple. To think that she would be framed by Zhou Tong. This made Hundred Flowers Child furious. This was the effect Yi Guqin wanted. When he returned, he would certainly fight Zhou Tong to the death. At that time, if the three divine-dwelling experts of the three imperial palaces intervened, the situation would be extremely disadvantageous. Even with the protection of Feng Manlu, Yi Guqin would find it difficult to kill Zhou Tong. But if Hundred Flowers' Child was there, the situation would be tilted towards Yi Guqin's side. "In that case, I have to thank you for saving my disciple." Hundred Flowers' Child's tone softened. Yi Guqin's words were sincere and did not seem to be a lie. Hundred Flowers' Child could tell at a glance. "That won't be necessary. As long as you can protect me when I leave the door of the ancient god, that will be enough." Yi Guqin cupped his fists slightly. Hundred Flower Child nodded and said, "All right, then it's settled. You can leave now. If the tomb of the gods and devils opens, I will naturally sense it and wait for you outside the tomb." Centauria Child had a special identity. Although she had concealed her aura, it was still difficult for her to enter the tomb of the gods and devils. Moreover, Hundred Flower Child knew that once the tomb of the divinity and devil opened, Wanyan Lan and the others outside the gate of the ancient god would not sit still. They would definitely come to investigate the situation inside the tomb of the divinity and devil. Therefore, Hundred Flowers' Child could only wait outside the tomb of the gods and devils. "All right, it's a deal." Yi Guqin immediately exited the cave. Looking at Yi Guqin's departing figure, Granny Hundred Flowers' beautiful face revealed a thoughtful expression. "This lad's strength is really shocking. Both his genuine qi and totem have been cultivated to such a high level. I really don't know where Yan Chang'e found such a peerless genius." Yi Guqin walked out of the Valley of 1,000 Medicine and found that the wooden bell spirit was still waiting for him outside the valley. Obviously, Mulanfang's actions had caused the Saintess of the Wood clan to lose all confidence in the so-called camp alliance. On the contrary, Yi Guqin gave the wooden bell spirit a sense of security. Seeing Yi Guqin's arrival, the wooden bell spirit's green eyes glistened. She was very smart and tactful, so she did not ask any questions. "Let's leave," said the wooden bell spirit. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. To be honest, not to mention the Tuoba camp, he had even made enemies with many people in the Mulan camp. Except for the Dragoness, Mulan and a few others, almost everyone was an enemy. With the wooden bell spirit as an ally, Yi Guqin could also relieve some of the pressure. Afterward, the two left the Valley of 1,000 Medicine and continued to rush toward the depths of the tomb of the gods and devils. Inside the gate of the ancient god, the Valley of 1,000 Medicine was not the only place with opportunities. Therefore, the saints and saintesses who entered also found many opportunities. As they searched, they also headed in the direction of the tomb of the gods and devils. The deeper they went, the more Yi Guqin could feel that the demonic qi seemed to be getting denser. Where did this black demonic qi come from? It can actually make people go crazy and turn into apes, Yi Guqin murmured. In the Wood clan, there are some fragmentary records. I heard that this tomb of the gods and devils is the place where a god and a devil fell, and that god is the ancestor of the barbarian clan, said the wooden bell spirit. The place where the gods and devils fell. Yi Guqin was a little curious. The so-called god, Yi Guqin guessed, was the ancient god clan. And what did the devil refer to? This strange demonic chi is rumored to be the aura left behind by the devil. Even the gate of the ancient god and the entire five elements mountain are means to suppress the devil. Of course, this is just a legend, said the wooden bell spirit. A devil suppressed by the five elements mountain? Interesting. Yiguchin nodded slightly. He knew much more about the ancient god clan than the wooden bell spirit. The ancient god clan was one of the 100 clans in the universe with an ancient heritage. And if the legend was true, then the so-called devil should be the opponent of the ancient god clan, and it could also be one of the 100 clans in the universe. Of course, Yiguchin was confused about the 100 clans in the universe. Until now, the only clan he knew was the ancient god clan. Yiguchin knew nothing about the other 99 clans. If it's really as I guessed, then the tomb of the gods and devils won't be peaceful. Yiguchin frowned. To be qualified to be the opponent of the ancient god clan, the devil would naturally not be weak. The demonic chi that remained in the universe was the best proof. That's the lightning fire ancient cave. At this moment, the wooden bell spirit exclaimed in surprise. Yiguchin came back to his senses and saw that in the horizon ahead, there was a series of red hills that were burning with flames and bursting with lightning. And in the middle of the hills, there was a black hole that looked like the mouth of a giant beast. It was daunting. The lightning fire ancient cave, is there a mystical fire thunder hidden in it? Yiguchin suddenly thought. Mulanua seemed to have told them before. Yes, rumor has it that there are several types of mystical fire thunder in the lightning fire ancient cave, but unfortunately, they are useless to me. The wooden bell spirit sighed slightly. Mystical fire thunder naturally restrained the Wood clan, and their attributes clashed, so it was useless to the wooden bell spirit. But to Yiguchin, it was useful. Because his third calamity, the Sea of Consciousness soul calamity, required a mystical fire of heaven and earth that could burn the soul. I wonder if I can find a mystical fire of heaven and earth that can burn the soul in the lightning fire ancient cave. Yiguchin's eyes flashed. He was looking forward to passing the Sea of Consciousness soul calamity. Then, he would use the ancient god technique to cultivate to the one-star ancient god realm. At that time, Yiguchin's strength would be unimaginably strong. Even an ordinary small profound martial realm expert would not be his opponent. Even if Zhou Tong obtained the life and death intent and could break through to the small profound martial realm. At that time, he would also realize how hopeless it would be for him to face Yiguchin. I want to enter the lightning fire ancient cave. Yiguchin did not hesitate. Then I'll wait for you outside. The wooden bell spirit nodded. Yiguchin nodded slightly, and his feet flashed as he entered the lightning fire ancient cave. Chapter 560. The lightning fire ancient cave was also one of the places of opportunity within the door of the ancient god. The exotic fire and lightning within it were naturally coveted. However, the fire tribe and the thunder tribe needed the exotic fire and thunder tribe the most. The fire tribe had suffered heavy losses in the ancient barren forbidden zone, and even Yan Xuanji had died. This time, no one from the fire tribe came to the door of the ancient god. As for the Thunder tribe, after Yiguchin killed Lei Jiuming, Lei Jiuyo was the only one left. Yiguchin was not too afraid of Lei Jiuyo, but he would not underestimate him either. After all, he was someone who had obtained the will of life and death. Even if he had not completely stepped into the life and death threshold, he was not far away. As soon as he entered the lightning fire ancient cave, Yiguchin felt a strong burning aura, which was mixed with the explosive force of lightning, rushing toward him. It can be used to temper the body. Yiguchin's eyes lit up. Exotic fire and lightning were the best materials for tempering the body. Moreover, he had cultivated the ancient god tactics, and his body needed to be tempered. Yiguchin did not use the heavenly demon general armor to protect his body. Instead, he let it go and accepted the tempering of the flames and lightning. However, the flames and lightning outside the lightning fire ancient cave were the most ordinary ones, and the tempering effect was limited. For Yiguchen, who had exotic fire and lightning, it was not very effective. He gradually went deeper into the lightning fire ancient cave. As he went deeper, the surrounding environment became more extreme. If it were an ordinary saint or saintess, they would not be able to move without using their totem power to protect themselves. However, Yiguchen was at ease, like a fish in water, accepting the tempering. At this moment, Yiguchen suddenly stopped in his tracks. The heavenly sun Xianming fire seed in his body seemed to tremble. It was an aura that sensed the same kind and threat. Exotic fire of heaven and earth. Yiguchen did not hesitate at all, and directly entered the lightning fire ancient cave. The lightning fire ancient cave was like a beehive, and there were many caves everywhere. Most of the caves only had ordinary flames and lightning. Only in a very small number of caves would there be strange flames and strange thunders. However, relying on the senses of the heavenly sun mystic underworld fire in his body, he chose a cave and entered it. The deeper he went, the more turbulent the blazing heat became. However, the strange thing was that the blazing power didn't seem to be just burning the body. Even his soul felt as if it was being roasted. The light in Yiguchen's eyes grew brighter and brighter. Finally, at the end of the tunnel, the space suddenly widened. Within it, there was a pitch-black flame floating in mid-air. As the pitch-black flame churned, it emitted a faint, soul-stirring fluctuation, as if it was a will-o'-the-wisp. That's the Nirvana demonic heart flame. Yiguchen's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. Yiguchen had followed the old drunkard for a while, and the old drunkard had told Yiguchen most of the types of heavenly flames and heavenly lightning. Yiguchen was not mistaken about this pitch-black flame. It was the Nirvana demonic heart flame that was rumored to be able to burn the soul and even trigger inner demons. The Nirvana demonic heart flame was ranked very high among the heavenly flames, far superior to the heavenly sun mystic underworld fire in Yiguchen's body. It was even almost on par with the old drunkard's purple emperor's heavenly fire. However, the Nirvana demonic heart flame's unique terrifying ability to burn the soul was something that even the purple emperor's heavenly fire could not compare to. As expected, a pillow is sent when I feel sleepy. Yiguchen could not help but reveal a faint smile. He had wanted to make a trip to the fire tribe to see if he could obtain a strange flame that could burn the soul. However, he never had the chance. Now, however, there was finally a flame that could help Yiguchen pass the soul tribulation in his sea of consciousness. However, there was a reason why the Nirvana demonic heart flame could exist in the lightning fire ancient cave for so long without being collected by anyone. It was because the Nirvana demonic heart flame was very difficult to refine. Back then, Yiguchen had been in great danger to refine the heavenly sun mystic underworld fire. Not to mention the Nirvana demonic heart flame. If the difficulty of refining the heavenly sun mystic underworld fire was 1, then the difficulty of refining the Nirvana demonic heart flame was more than 50. These flames were not on the same level at all. In addition to the Nirvana demonic heart flame's unique ability to burn the soul, even some of the fire tribe's saints did not dare to refine it previously. Yiguchen suddenly swept his gaze around. He suddenly discovered that there were some corpses in this space. Judging from their appearances, they were all saints and saintesses who had failed to refine the Nirvana demonic heart flame. These corpses had long been charred black, and their shapes were all distorted as if they had suffered great torture. Yiguchen's expression was also slightly solemn. It was no wonder that the Nirvana demonic heart flame had existed here for so long and no one had been able to take it away. It was because those who had tried to refine and take it away were all dead. As its name suggested, the Nirvana demonic heart flame had a terrifying special ability. It could use its own flame to trigger the inner demons in people's hearts. This inner demon could be some kind of obsession, a person, or some kind of painful memory. All in all, inner demons were extremely terrifying. One could see some clues from these distorted corpses. Even in the future, when Yiguchen cultivated to a higher level, he would also have to endure the test of inner demons. The path of martial arts is to go against the current. If I am afraid, how can I attain the supreme peak? Yiguchen's eyes were filled with determination. His temperament had long since been tested. If it were anyone else, even if the Fire Tribe's patriarch came here and saw the Nirvana demonic heart flame, they might not necessarily dare to refine it. But Yiguchen dared to do so. Because he had not forgotten his blood feud and Gu Xiaoyang. If he wanted to defeat Gu Xiaoyang, a top heaven's pride of the South Horizon region and one of the 10 great young masters, how could he not fight? And the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra was Yiguchen's strongest means to crush these heaven's prides of the South Horizon region. Therefore, Yiguchen must overcome the soul tribulation of the Sea of Consciousness. He must also refine the Nirvana demonic heart flame. Let's begin. This place was quiet and empty. It was a good time to refine it. Yiguchen slowly approached the Nirvana demonic heart flame. The Nirvana demonic heart flame also seemed to have spirituality, rolling more violently. It actually has a trace of spirituality. No wonder it is a top rare flame of heaven and earth, Yiguchen thought to himself. At this time, in the violently rolling pitch-black flame, it gradually condensed into a terrifying human face. The human face could not speak, but it could emit a ghostly howl that made one's heart tremble, as if one's soul was about to be shattered. You have no right to resist me. You can only become my flame and be used by me. Yiguchen's vital qi and totem power burst out with a loud bang. The power of the 2 attributes was released by Yiguchen at the same time, directly enveloping the Nirvana demonic heart flame. The pitch-black flame suddenly seemed to be boiling, and the ghostly howl also became sharper, almost shattering the Sea of Consciousness. But Yiguchen's Sea of Consciousness was protected by the meteorite demonic soul butterfly, so it was not affected. Nirvana demonic heart flame, let me see how difficult it is to refine you. The vital qi and totem power directly compressed the Nirvana demonic heart flame's fire seed to the size of a fist. Then, it was swallowed by Yiguchen. Chapter 561. The moment he swallowed the fire seed, Yiguchen's body shook violently. It was as if his body and soul had fallen to the bottom of the 18 levels of hell and suffered endless inhumane torture. Pain. Heart-wrenching pain. It was as if every bone and every blood vessel was being roasted on a metal plate. Not to mention the effect on the soul, just the physical body alone was causing extreme pain. The Heavenly Sun Xianming fire was not as terrifying as this. Heavenly Sun Xianming fire, come out. Yiguchen did not hesitate to activate the Heavenly Sun Xianming fire. The Heavenly Sun Xianming fire had long been refined by him. It surged out at this moment to counteract the terrifying temperature of the silent demon flame. However, Yiguchen was slightly taken aback. Inside his body, the Nirvana heart demon flame spread out and devoured the Heavenly Sun Xianming fire the moment it sensed the movement of the Heavenly Sun Xianming flame. This can be devoured? Yiguchen was a little stunned. The old drunkard had said that there were some top rare flames that were extremely spiritual and could even devour lower-level flames. However, he did not expect the silent demon flame to have such an ability. Then, the ink-black flames in Yiguchen's body surged out in all directions and spread directly to Yiguchen's dantian, wrapping around the fire seed of the Heavenly Sun Xianming fire. Not good. Yiguchen's heart skipped a beat. The silent demon flame was too domineering. It wanted to devour the Heavenly Sun Xianming fire. The Heavenly Sun Xianming fire was not like the silent demon flame. It did not have any spiritual nature and therefore could not resist being devoured. Chi, the black flames wrapped around the fire seed of the Heavenly Sun Xianming fire and were refined and devoured. The power of the silent demon flame skyrocketed the moment it devoured the fire seed. There was a loud boom. Black flames spewed out of Yiguchen's body from the inside out. The sizzling sound of burning resounded continuously. The pain seeped into his bone marrow, as if his entire body was being roasted in a frying pan. Yiguchen gritted his teeth again and activated the flawless Vajra body. His charred body emitted a greenish-golden divine light, making him look like a greenish-golden statue sitting cross-legged in the pitch-black flames. After that, Yiguchin took out many top-grade elixirs, healing elixirs, and so on. He swallowed them like they were cabbages. Boundless medicinal power surged out, nourishing his charred body. Calm your mind and concentrate. Hold your vital energy and return to one. Yiguchin sat cross-legged on the ground. Not only did Yiguchin use the impeccable Vajra body, but he also used the ancient god tactic. His body grew again, and he was now 9 feet tall. A faint star mark appeared on his forehead, and ancient light patterns spread out on the surface of his body. The strength of his body had increased by more than 3 times. With all these blessings, Yiguchin was still suffering from extreme pain and torment, but his body was barely able to maintain its vitality and was not directly burned to ashes. The situation fell into a stalemate. However, this kind of inhuman pain was not something that anyone could endure. Yiguchin did not even make a sound. He gritted his teeth, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. To obtain extraordinary power, one had to endure what ordinary people could not. This was a principle that Yiguchin had understood long ago. The silent demonic heart flame seemed to have sensed that Yiguchin was a tough nut to crack. Therefore, it seemed to have decided to use its best ability. Boom! The pitch-black flame directly rushed into Yiguchin's sea of consciousness. What kind of pain was that? The sea of consciousness was like the sea of chi. It was an absolute forbidden zone for a martial artist. If these 2 places were damaged, the result would be fatal. It could even cut off one's martial path. Therefore, when Yiguchin suppressed the heavenly sun Xianming fire into his sea of qi, the old drunkard had called him a madman. Right now, the sea of consciousness was more important than the sea of qi. If the sea of qi was destroyed, he would at most become a cripple. However, if the sea of consciousness was damaged, he would at least become an idiot or a vegetable. In serious cases, he would lose his life. This was also the reason why some prodigies and experts had spiritual objects guarding their sea of consciousness. Just as the silent demonic heart flame rushed into Yiguchin's sea of consciousness. The meteorite demon soul butterfly in the sea of consciousness seemed to have sensed the danger and directly flapped its wings. A fluorescent light shield shrouded Yiguchin's sea of consciousness. The pitch-black flame completely enveloped the light shield. As the flame rolled, the light shield fluctuated. Obviously, because the silent demonic heart flame was too powerful, even the meteorite demon soul butterfly could not hold on for long. Just what I want. Yiguchin closed his eyes and sat cross-legged. He directly entered a meditative state and began to operate the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. In just a short while, the protective light shield released by the meteorite demon soul butterfly was burned to ashes by the silent demonic heart flame. Then, the terrifying pitch-black flame completely rushed into Yiguchin's sea of consciousness. What kind of pain was that? The pain of the soul was thousands of times more painful than the pain of the flesh. If it was an ordinary person, he would have fainted from the pain. However, Yiguchin gritted his teeth tightly. Blood flowed from the corners of his closed eyes. Ah, a low and hoarse voice came from Yiguchin's mouth. Yiguchin madly operated the soul power in his sea of consciousness. The meteorite demon soul butterfly leaned against the undying soul pearl to resist the burning of the pitch-black flame. Not knowing how long had passed, Yiguchin only felt that one breath was like 10,000 years. With the operation of the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, Yiguchin also gradually adapted to the terrifying burning power. The soul power in his sea of consciousness gushed out after being burned, and then it was burned again after gushing out. In the continuous burning and refining, the area of his sea of consciousness also became bigger and bigger, and his soul power became more and more vigorous. Finally, at a certain moment, Yiguchin felt as if a shackle was broken. From his sea of consciousness, there was a cracking sound. The first minor tribulation of the soul tribulation in his sea of consciousness had been passed. However, Yiguchin did not stop, because the heart demon flame had not been refined yet. If it was an ordinary soul fire, it might only help Yiguchin pass the first minor tribulation. However, the power of the heart demon flame was far beyond ordinary rare flames. Therefore, Yiguchin wanted to pass 2 consecutive tribulations to break through to the perfect sea of consciousness. Yiguchin turned his wrist and took out the soul extradition lotus. The quality of the soul extradition lotus was close to that of a sacred medicine. It was also the most precious medicine that Yiguchin had taken apart from the 5 elements sacred fruit. Boom! Just as Yiguchin swallowed the soul extradition lotus, an unparalleled and majestic medicinal power rushed into Yiguchin's sea of consciousness. Immediately, his spiritual sea, which had been burned to an unrecognizable state by the silent heart demon flame, was once again nourished, as though it had met a good rain after a long drought. As the saying went, even if a wildfire could not burn it out, it would grow again when the spring breeze blew. After being burned by the heart demon flame, the soul power that was gathered again was far thicker and more condensed than before. It was as viscous as mercury. However, this was not enough. Yiguchin's goal was to completely pass the second minor tribulation and cultivate to the perfect sea of consciousness. Heart demon flame, refine. Yiguchin meditated again, pulled the heart demon flame into his sea of consciousness, and began to refine it. Chapter 562. If an ordinary person were to pull the nirvana heart demon flame directly into the sea of consciousness, that person would definitely die at the first moment. Because the sea of consciousness was more fragile than the sea of chi. If the sea of consciousness collapsed, the person would die. But Yiguchin was different. He cultivated the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. The 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra cultivated Yiguchin's physical body, from the sea of chi to the sea of consciousness, to a level that ordinary people could not reach. Of course, it was accompanied by endless pain. The moment Yiguchin completely pulled the fire seed of the nirvana heart demon flame into his sea of consciousness, Yiguchin felt as if his entire soul had been ignited. Even with the nourishment of the soul extradition lotus, Yiguchin's sea of consciousness was like a pot of boiling oil, making a sizzling sound. It was an indescribable pain. Yiguchin's lips were pale, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. It was a horrifying sight. He was truly bleeding from his 7 orifices. But at the same time that he was enduring extreme pain, Yiguchin was also constantly operating his soul power to envelop the fire seed, trying his best to merge it, refine it, and control it. However, the nirvana heart demon flame was a flame with spirituality. It was not like the heavenly sun Xianming fire, which could be refined so easily. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many charred skeletons on the ground. Boom! As if sensing a threat, the fire seed of the nirvana heart demon flame started to roll again. It released another unique and terrifying ability, the heart demon flame. Just as the nirvana heart demon flame was rolling, the scene in front of Yiguchin suddenly changed. He was no longer in the lightning fire ancient cave. Instead, he was on a desolate plain. There were countless figures surrounding him, looking at him with sighs, pity, and sarcasm. This is... Yiguchin was in a daze for a moment. In front of him, a figure as elegant as a lotus flew out like a bird with broken wings. There was also a sparkling sword embryo that was sent flying. Silly boy, remember this lady, a sweet voice, weak, regretless, and pitiful, rang in Yiguchin's ears. Boom! Yiguchin's mind suddenly shook. This was the scene of Su Jianqi blocking the innate sword embryo for him. Yiguchin looked into the distance again. Not far away in the sky, a figure dressed in a Big Dipper robe and wearing a Mizar star crown was looking at Yiguchin with undisguised contempt and indifference. Gu Xiaoyang. Yiguchin's mind was in turmoil. Although he clearly knew that this scene was created by the nirvana heart demon flame, the grievance and the hatred that was carved into his bones could not be eliminated. In order to save him, Su Jianqi had been struck by his sword and had been in a deep slumber ever since. His innate ability, the innate sword embryo, was still in Gu Xiaoyang's body. It helped him become a peerless genius with 2 innate abilities. This kind of enmity would not end until one of them was dead. At this moment, pitch-black flames were rising from Gu Xiaoyang's body, giving Gu Xiaoyang a demonic aura. It was obvious that this was the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame's doing. Because Gu Xiaoyang was Yi Guqin's inner demon. If he didn't get rid of him, it would greatly affect Yi Guqin in the future. Yi Guqin, did you know that you were just a clown from the beginning to the end? You couldn't even protect your woman. Your congenital sword embryo was taken away by me and became my divine sense. You were just a humble stepping stone. Yi Guqin said. Gu Xiaoyang stood high in the sky, surrounded by pitch-black flames that seemed to want to burn the world. This was the inner demon's question. It made Yi Guqin feel ashamed and his heart shattered. If it was anyone else, they would definitely be incomparably sad and angry. But who was Yi Guqin? Even an inner demon couldn't shake his heart. However, Yi Guqin finally understood why the bodies of the dead saints and saintesses were twisted and crazy. Not everyone could resist the influence of an inner demon. Yi Guqin, I risked my life to save you, but what about you? Do you even have me in your heart? Why didn't you save me? I hate you. At this moment, the beautiful figure in green suddenly turned around. Her beautiful face was covered with blood. She looked like an evil spirit and cursed Yi Guqin with the most heart-wrenching curse. Yi Guqin's calm expression suddenly changed. An inner demon couldn't affect him. But Yi Guqin wouldn't allow the elegant girl in his heart to turn into such an image. Nirvana Heart Demon Flame, your test has angered me. Yi Guqin closed his eyes. With a boom, his spiritual sea crazily revolved. Endless soul fluctuations seemed to shatter all the illusions before him. Rumble, the ground seemed to collapse as the surrounding scenery peeled off. He returned to the lightning fire ancient cave. I will save Su Jianshi, and I will kill Gu Xiaoyang. Therefore, an inner demon like the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame is useless against me. Yi Guqin roared. Within his spiritual sea, the undying soul pearl that Yingning had given him shattered as well. A powerful and pure spiritual energy gushed out once again. First came the soul extradite lotus, then the undying soul pearl. The soul power in Yi Guqin's spiritual sea was now terrifyingly vigorous. Nirvana Heart Demon Flame, refine. Yi Guqin roared again in his heart. The meteorite demon soul butterfly also helped to release the astral soul wave. For a moment, the soul extradite lotus, the meteorite demon soul butterfly, and the meteorite demon soul lotus. There was also Yi Guqin's 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. With all kinds of support, the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame was also forced into a desperate situation. It was wrapped and refined by the vigorous soul power as it made its final struggle. After 2 hours, Yi Guqin's mind rumbled. His spiritual sea spun again like a whirlpool. His cultivation had officially broken through to the 9 changes of the Divine Soul Realm. Moreover, it was the peak of the 9 changes of the Divine Soul Realm. At the same time, his spiritual sea surged. The range of his spiritual sea expanded again, and the intensity of his soul power multiplied. The second minor tribulation of the spiritual sea had been broken through. Yi Guqin's spiritual sea had become a perfect spiritual sea. Moreover, the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame was also refined under the continuous refining and erosion of his soul power. At the moment when everything was done, Yi Guqin suddenly opened his eyes. 2 pitch-black flames burned in Yi Guqin's pupils. What was more shocking was that pitch-black flames were really gushing out from Yi Guqin's eyes. The aura of his 9 changes of the Divine Soul Realm spread out, shaking the entire space as if a raging dragon had awakened. At the same time, an incomparably terrifying soul fluctuation poured out like a raging sea. That kind of soul fluctuation was enough to make a Divine Soul Realm expert tremble in fear. Yi Guqin stood straight, feeling that his cultivation was unprecedentedly prosperous. His aura was surging, and more importantly, his soul power was far stronger than before. It could be said that Yi Guqin took a risk to refine the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame. Although the risk was not small, the harvest was also incomparably huge. It could be said that it was a rapid improvement. Chapter 563. Yiguchin stood in place, sensing his body and counting his gains. First, it was naturally his cultivation base. Yiguchin's cultivation base had already broken through to the peak of the 9 transformations of the divine soul. Next, as long as he relied on himself to comprehend the truth between life and death, he could break through to the life and death threshold. And Yiguchin was sure that once he broke through, it would be the great threshold. It was definitely not the kind of small threshold that relied on the will of life and death to break through. Next, it was naturally the 2 tribulations of the Sea of Consciousness soul tribulation. Now, his Sea of Consciousness had become a great perfection Sea of Consciousness. If Yiguchin's Sea of Consciousness was just a well before. But now, it was a vast river, surging endlessly. Yiguchin estimated that the range of his Sea of Consciousness and the strength of his soul power were almost 10 times that of an ordinary divine soul realm expert. This was a kind of gap like a natural chasm. And the Sea of Consciousness was the foundation, the most important, related to the soul palace and even the primordial spirit in the future. It could be said that as long as the foundation was laid, Yiguchin would be able to crush people of the same level in the future at any level. Next is the last small tribulation of the Sea of Consciousness soul tribulation. As long as I pass it, I can cultivate the chaotic Sea of Consciousness. I wonder what kind of power it will have. Yiguchin thought to himself. His great perfection Sea of Consciousness was like a river, far surpassing that of ordinary people. But if he could cultivate the chaotic Sea of Consciousness, it would be comparable to the endless sea, many times stronger than the great perfection Sea of Consciousness. But to cultivate the chaotic Sea of Consciousness, he still needed a kind of heaven and earth treasure called the chaotic origin crystal. This kind of rare item was difficult to find, and its preciousness was probably comparable to that of Saint medicines. It would be difficult for Yiguchin to find it in a short period of time. Moreover, Yiguchin had refined the heart demon flame, which was another powerful trump card. Although the heavenly sun Xianming fire was devoured, it made the heart demon flame stronger. Yiguchin could also use the heart demon flame to burn the enemy's soul. It could even trigger the enemy's inner demons. One could imagine what would happen if the enemy's inner demons were to erupt at a critical moment. However, Yiguchin also knew that this method could only be used against existences whose soul force was weaker than his own. If Yiguchin used this move against a divine-dwelling expert, it would only result in a backlash. Yiguchin observed his Sea of Consciousness and made an unexpected discovery. It was the second star spot that appeared on the meteorite demon soul butterfly's wings. Yiguchin knew that the meteorite demonic butterfly was probably still in its infant state. And just now, when Yiguchin was breaking through in his cultivation, it had also absorbed the soul energy of the soul extraditation lotus and the seed pearl, which was why it had undergone such a transformation. Now, with the addition of a spot, the meteorite demonic soul butterfly was even stronger. It also released wisps of soul fluctuations, as if it was happy to tell Yiguchin that it had acquired some new means. It wasn't just the simple star soul wave and defensive light shield anymore. The harvest this time is too great. Yiguchin took a deep breath, his eyes shining brightly. His strength had skyrocketed again. If he could obtain the inheritance left behind by the ancient god in the tomb of the fiend gods and cultivate to become a one-star ancient god, Yiguchin was absolutely confident that he could crush a minor Xian martial realm cultivator without any external help. After adjusting his breath, Yiguchin also left the space. However, he didn't directly leave the lightning fire ancient cave. Instead, he spread out his spirit perception to explore if there were other opportunities in this place. Yiguchin's spirit perception range was 4,000 feet before, but now it had skyrocketed to 10,000 feet. It should be known that an ordinary expert in the 9th transformation of the divine soul realm could only sense about 1,000 feet. Yiguchin's perception range was 10 times that of them. It would have been fine if he didn't explore, but once he did, Yiguchen discovered something. In another cave in the depths of the lightning fire ancient cave, Yiguchen could vaguely sense an extremely explosive power. There was even a trace of it that Yiguchen was familiar with. Enemies are bound to meet. After Yiguchen sensed the fluctuation, a faint cold light surged in his eyes. If he was not wrong, that aura belonged to Lei Jiuyo. Yiguchen did not forget that Lei Jiuyo and the others had attacked in the ancient barren forbidden zone, killing the disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest in the valley. Although Zhou Tong had acted as the middleman, it was a fact that Lei Jiuyo and the others had attacked. Lei Jiuyo has obtained the will of life and death in the ancient barren fighting ring. His strength must be extraordinary now. It's a good opportunity to test my current strength. Yiguchen's eyes flickered, and he flashed away. In the lightning fire ancient cave, he didn't have to worry about anything. On the other side, in the depths of a cave, there was a huge space. The space was filled with endless thunderbolts. As the thunderbolts rolled, they vaguely condensed into the shape of dragons. If one were to count them carefully, there were a total of 9 thunder dragons rolling in the space. They intertwined with each other and turned into a cocoon-like appearance. In the middle of the cocoon, there was a figure sitting with his legs crossed. His long blue hair fluttered, and there were thunderbolts shooting out from every strand of his hair. It was the unparalleled holy son of the Thunder Tribe, Lei Jiuyo. The bloodline of the Thunder God that he possessed was of the same level as the bloodline of the Water Dragon of the Dragon Lady. Moreover, he was a genius with double unusual thunders. In addition, he had obtained the will of life and death and had some comprehension. Currently, an ordinary Triple Crown King could not defeat him. At a certain moment, Lei Jiuyo suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were like 2 thunder lakes. Lightning bolts that were 3 feet long shot out of his eyes. Lei Jiuyo let out a long roar, and his aura was like a dragon's roar. The 9 thunder dragons that were surrounding him roared at the sky at the same time, as though they were completely assimilated and controlled by Lei Jiuyo. Ha! Great opportunity. Now that I have refined the 9 dragons' dark bomb, in addition to the 2 types of unusual thunders that I already have, I am an unparalleled holy son with triple unusual thunders. Now, other than Tuoba Shang, no one can stop me. Lei Jiuyo laughed heartily, and his aura was extremely terrifying. Thunderbolts shot out from the void. Originally, he had double unusual thunders. After he started comprehending the will of life and death, he was considered the strongest person after Tuoba Shang. Perhaps only the Golden Sun Saint, Feng Shaotian, and a few others could be on par with him. But now, after Lei Jiuyo found the 9 dragons' dark bomb in the lightning fire ancient cave, he started to refine it. The dark bomb was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to refine. However, Lei Jiuyo had the bloodline of the Thunder God and was naturally compatible with thunderbolts. In addition, with the help of his supreme totem, the sky-devouring thunderous beast, he successfully refined the 9 dragons' dark bomb after spending some time. After refining the 9 dragons' dark bomb, Lei Jiuyo's strength increased again. He reckoned that even if he were to face the transformed Tuoba Shang, he would not need to be too wary. As for Mu Lanyue and the others, Lei Jiuyo did not take them seriously. Everyone thinks that Tuoba Shang is the best candidate to be the young king. Now that I have triple unusual thunders, I might be able to compete with Tuoba Shang. By then, I will be the only king to unify the barbarian tribe. Lightning shot out from Lei Jiuyo's eyes. His ambition was not any weaker than Tuoba Shang's. Oh, unifying the barbarian tribe? You? At this moment, a faint voice was heard. Who is it? Lei Jiuyo shouted, and lightning surged around him. Yiguchen walked out slowly. Dugawubai. Lei Jiuyo frowned slightly. Outside the 5 Elements Temple, Mu Lanfang deliberately targeted Yiguchen. She wanted everyone to know that Yiguchen wanted to deal with Tuoba Shang alone. Lei Jiuyo naturally noticed it, but he did not care. After all, it was not uncommon to see arrogant people. Dugu Wubai, you dare to show yourself? Great, I have just refined the 9 Dragons Dark Bomb and my strength has increased tremendously. I can use you as a whetstone. Lei Jiuyo's tone was filled with contempt, as if Yiguchin was a turtle in a jar. Oh, then we seem to be on the same side. However, you will not be able to walk out of the lightning fire ancient cave today. Yiguchin said indifferently. You are the one who will die. Lei Jiuyo raised his eyebrows and stretched out one hand to attack Yiguchin. Chapter 564. In other people's eyes, Yiguchin was a Triple Crown champion who was quite powerful. However, Lei Jiuyo didn't take him seriously. Especially now that Lei Jiuyo had refined the 9 Dragons Dark Bomb. The only opponent left in his eyes was Tuo Bashang. Yiguchin was nothing in his eyes at the moment. Lei Jiuyo stretched out his hand as if he was going to suppress Yiguchin. Vigorous thunder totem power gathered in front of his hand and formed a ferocious thunder claw. Then, he clawed at Yiguchin's head. If it had been an ordinary person, their head would have exploded under this claw. However, Yiguchin curled his lips into a faint smile. He activated the green dragon totem in his body and vigorous totem power gathered in his arm. In the end, it turned into a dragon claw that was covered in scales. After the ancestral totem was fully awakened, Yiguchin's totem possession technique had reached the point of perfection. The power of the green dragon claw was much stronger than before. Yiguchin stretched out his dragon claw and crushed the thunder claw that was coming at him. After the thunder claw was crushed, there was still a glaring thunderbolt that entered Yiguchin's body. If it were an ordinary person, even if they could withstand the thunderbolt, they would be paralyzed and unable to move. However, Yiguchin looked calm and he moved freely as if he was immune to the thunderbolt. When Lei Jiuyo saw it, he frowned. He seemed to have noticed something unusual about Yiguchin. You are quite capable to be able to defeat Tuo Balai. However, that's all. Although Lei Jiuyo felt that something was amiss, he didn't think too much about it. He was still very confident in his own strength. In the next moment, Lei Jiuyo took a step forward and there was a thunderous sound coming from the bottom of his feet. There was a sizzling sound and lightning flashed. Lei Jiuyo's body appeared less than 3 feet away from Yiguchin like a ghost. Thunderstorm Fist. Lei Jiuyo spread out his 5 fingers and lightning coiled around them. Then, he closed them and turned them into a fist. He aimed it at Yiguchin's chest. Endless lightning coiled around it, showing the power of this fist. Good timing. Yiguchin also threw out a punch. The two collided, and an incomparably powerful shockwave surged out in all directions. It caused the entire space to rumble. Lei Jiuyo had also been tempered by strange lightning since he was young. Coupled with the bloodline of the Thunder God, his physical strength and tenacity were exceptionally strong. It could be said that in the entire barbarian race, there were not many saints who could compete with him in terms of physical strength. Unfortunately, he met Yiguchin. Boom! An extremely powerful force was transmitted from the tip of the fist. Lei Jiuyo's expression changed abruptly and he took a few steps back. Moreover, he swung his arm in an attempt to dissipate the terrifying force. However, there were still cracks spreading on his bones. Your physical body. Lei Jiuyo's face darkened. By then, if he still dared to look down on Yiguchin, he would be really stupid. Yiguchin also waved his hand slightly to get rid of the thunderstorm chi that had invaded his body. It had to be said that if it were an ordinary person, the thunderstorm totem power would be really difficult to deal with. However, it was a pity that Yiguchin also had exotic lightning in his body. Hence, he was immune to it. With your cultivation, you are definitely not a nobody in the barbarian race. I don't believe that you are just a wandering barbarian. Lei Jiuyo looked deeply at Yiguchin. He immediately raised his hands and activated the exotic lightning in his body. In an instant, 2 types of exotic lightning coiled around his arms. One type of thunderstorm was blood red and the other was light black. They were the two types of exotic lightning that Lei Jiuyo originally had, Blood Soul Thunder and Dark Sky Thunder. Void Crystal Lightning Spiritual Hand. Lei Jiuyo's arms were coiled with two types of exotic lightning. It was as though he was wearing two thunder gloves. As he moved, thunder rumbled and the void shook. Ha! Lei Jiuyo threw out a punch and there were hundreds of lightning bolts. With the addition of the exotic lightning, the power was even stronger and it charged towards Yiguchen fiercely. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows and said with a tinge of interest, "Do you think that you are the only one who has exotic lightning?" Yiguchen also activated the exotic lightning in his body. In an instant, the purple thunderstorm burst out. It was the purple lightning ghastly thunder. This is exotic lightning. This time, Lei Jiuyo was really surprised. The young man in front of him, Dugu Wubai, always seemed to surprise him. However, there was something that shocked Lei Jiuyo even more. Yiguchen triggered his thoughts and a silver thunderstorm that was more terrifying than the purple thunderstorm burst out. It caused the void to shake and rumble continuously. Dark lightning. Lei Jiuyo could not help but exclaim. He had the bloodline of the thunder god and he was very sensitive to the exotic lightning. Naturally, he could tell that the silver thunderstorm that Yiguchen took out was of the dark lightning class. One should know that if Lei Jiuyo had not refined the 9 dragons dark lightning previously, he would only have 2 types of ordinary exotic lightning. Who are you? Besides my thunder tribe, which other tribe has so many exotic lightnings and even dark lightning? Lei Jiuyo's eyes were filled with lightning as he stared at Yiguchen. It was as though he wanted to see through him. You will know very soon. Yiguchen smiled coldly. He did not intend to hide his identity. That was because he had to get rid of Lei Jiuyo today. Ha, my thunder tribe also has a secret skill that can strip exotic lightnings. Today, after I kill you and take away your 2 types of exotic lightnings, I will be a peerless holy sun with 5 types of exotic lightnings. Even Tuoba Shang will not be my match. Lei Jiuyo's eyes were filled with blazing light as though he had taken Yiguchen as a leek to be harvested. He activated the void crystal lightning spirit hand with both hands and caused the void lightning to burst out and attack Yiguchen. Yiguchen also activated the 2 types of exotic lightnings and collided with Lei Jiuyo. Boom! 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 The sound of fists hitting flesh reverberated in the space. Yiguchen was slightly surprised. Lei Jiuyo was indeed not weak. His totemic power was used to perfection in his every move, as if he had mastered it through a comprehensive study. Don't you know that I have obtained the life and death intent in the ancient battlefield? Although I have not fully refined it, I have already touched the life and death juncture. You can say that I am half a step into the life and death juncture. Lei Jiuyo smiled confidently. He clasped his hands together and the thunder totem power in his body boiled to the extreme. A vigorous power of thunder and lightning was brewing between his palms. Sky Thunder 8 Extremes Force. Lei Jiuyo activated the thunder flash and teleported in front of Yiguchen. He then pushed out with both palms. Rumble. It was as though a thunderbolt had passed through and 8 thunders exploded. The power of the Sky Thunder 8 Extremes Force was extremely strong. Under such a move, an ordinary 3-crown king would be seriously injured and on the verge of death. However, there was a 5-colored brilliance in Yiguchen's eyes. He no longer hid anything and the 5-colored totem power in his body exploded. The totem power of the 5 attributes spread out and formed a roulette in front of Yiguchen. It was a manifestation of the 5 elements Tao. This is. Lei Jiuyo's eyes were wide open. All the previous shock was not as shocking as the scene before him. Boom! The 5-colored roulette collided with the Sky Thunder 8 Extremes Force and a destructive wave spread out in all directions. Both of them retreated but Lei Jiuyo was obviously at a disadvantage. However, at this moment, there was an unconcealable astonishment on his face. Lei Jiuyo, maybe you don't know who your opponent is. Yiguchen stood upright like a sword that could hold up the sky. The crimson blood hell sword had appeared in Yiguchen's hand. Behind him, the 5 ancestor totems were faintly visible in the void. You are the 5-crown king. Lei Jiuyo gritted his teeth and his tone was cold. However, there was a tinge of shock in his eyes. He had never expected that the Triple Crown King, who had embarrassed himself outside the 5 Elements Temple and said that he would take on Tuoba Shang alone, was actually the 5-crown king who was covered in blood armor that day. Chapter 565. Lei Jiuyo looked at Yiguchen and his expression changed drastically. He could no longer remain calm. He did not expect that the ordinary young man from the barbarian tribe was the 5-crown king, who was clad in blood armor and wielded a blood sword. If this news were to spread, it would shock everyone. After all, the mysterious 5-crown king had attracted the attention of everyone in the barbarian tribe. Even the great elder, Wan Yanlan, wanted to find him. However, Lei Jiuyo did not expect that the mysterious 5-crown king would be right under everyone's nose. Moreover, he was ridiculed by everyone. There was no more ironic scene than this. You hid your identity and entered the door of the ancient god. Why? Do you want to become a young king? Lei Jiuyo gritted his teeth and said word by word. He had thought that his only opponent was Tuoba Shang. However, Yiguchen's identity as 5-crown king had been revealed and he was fearful. Although his current strength was far from what he had been at the ancient battle ring, he was still a 5-crown king. However, he was still the 5-crown king after all. No one in the barbarian race would look down on him. Yiguchen did not reply but smiled faintly. Lei Jiuyo, the grudge between us is not small. Let's fight. Although you are the holy son of the lightning tribe, your understanding of the way of lightning might not be higher than mine. After Yiguchen finished speaking, he activated the strange lightning in his body again and the 2 types of strange lightning surged out. What a joke. So what if you are the 5-crown king? If I kill you, I will be famous immediately. Even Tuoba Shang will be inferior to me. Lei Jiuyo's expression turned fierce. He wanted to go all out to fight Yiguchen. However, in the next moment, Yiguchen's move caused Lei Jiuyo's expression to change. Strange lightning fusion, kill. Yiguchen's purple lightning, ghastly lightning and extreme void Xian lightning intertwined in midair. After that, they fused and turned into an even more powerful silver-purple lightning. It was the fused purple void Xian lightning. Rumble. The silver-purple lightning was like a raging dragon that was circling around and it charged towards Lei Jiuyo. How is that possible? Lei Jiuyo was in disbelief. Mutated lightning was a violent energy. Even if one could refine it, it was almost impossible to fuse it together. Yiguchen was able to fuse with the mutated lightning only because of a momentary accident. Lei Jiuyo also unleashed his blood soul devil lightning and dark sky black lightning. The 2 types of lightning collided with the purple void mystic lightning in the void. However, the purple void profound lightning was like a wolf in a flock of sheep. It tore apart the 2 types of strange lightning and continued to attack Lei Jiuyo. Damn it! Lei Jiuyo's face darkened. He claimed to be the Lightning Clan's peerless holy son, but in the end, he actually lost to 5-crown king in the Tao of Lightning. How could he accept this? Sky-devouring lightning beast, go! Lei Jiuyo was not surprised at all. He summoned his ultimate totem, the sky-devouring thunder beast. As boundless lightning surged, a terrifying giant beast spirit wrapped in strange lightning appeared. That giant beast was like an ancient Taotai. Opening its big black mouth, it devoured the purple void mystic lightning inside. Yiguchen's expression did not change. He similarly summoned his 5 great progenitor totems. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, Soaring Snake. Even though the 5 elements totems did not have a tribute restraining effect on lightning attribute totems. However, the innate pressure of the progenitor totems still affected the sky-devouring thunder beast. Lei Jiuyo immediately sensed that his sky-devouring thunder beast's strength was suppressed by at least 30%. The lightning on its body dimmed significantly. Five-colored totem, go. Yi Guqin's mind stirred. The five great progenitor totems seemingly formed a killing formation, trapping the sky-devouring thunder beast directly. After refining the five elements stone, Yi Guqin's understanding of the Tao of the five elements became even deeper. Deploying the five-colored totem also became smoother. Lei Jiuyo, bring out your true capabilities, Yi Guqin said coolly. His true strength had yet to be displayed. If Lei Jiuyo only had this much ability, then it would be disappointing. Penta-crown king, don't be too smug. You will have a taste of my abilities. Lei Jiuyo's expression was grave as he took out his divine weapon, a silver lightning rod. Thunderclap of the nine heavens. Two different types of lightning coiled around the silver lightning rod. Lei Jiuyo consecutively struck out 9 times with each rod stronger than the previous one. In an instant, 9 lightning rod shadows smashed towards Yi Guqin's head. Lei Jiuyo's current strength was almost at the quasi-profound martial realm. So when he attacked, the power was naturally far stronger than an ordinary expert at the pinnacle of the 9 transformations divine soul realm. However, Yi Guqin wasn't a pushover either. He activated the edge-splitting array in the blood hell sword, and a sharp sword radiance shot out. Then, Yi Guqin added the power of the white tiger totem, causing the blood hell sword to become even sharper. Whoosh! Yi Guqin used the 5 types of sword wills. Sometimes they were incomparably sharp, sometimes they were surging with flames, and sometimes they were as gentle as water. They collided with the 9 rod shadows, causing ripples to burst forth. 5 elements Tao. Lei Jiuyo's gaze was deep as he could sense how difficult Yi Guqin was to deal with. He executed the thunder flash again and teleported to Yi Guqin's side. The two of them began to fight in close quarters. Yi Guqin seemed to be tempering his 5-sword intents. As he circulated his sword aura, there seemed to be a resonance. On the other hand, Lei Jiuyo's rod aura was ferocious as it carried the overbearing power of lightning. However, Yi Guqin was able to deal with it calmly. Take this. Lei Jiuyo bellowed. World lightning punishment. Rumble. A large patch of dark clouds spread out above Lei Jiuyo's head. The heavenly thunder rolled like a tide of thunder, pouring down on Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin executed the shadow step and shuttled through the thunder tide. The surface of his body was also covered with purple void mysterious lightning. He suddenly got close to Lei Jiuyo and activated his Sea of Consciousness. In an instant, an extremely vigorous soul power surged out and bombarded Lei Jiuyo. This is soul power. Lei Jiuyo's face changed. That was because that spiritual strength made him feel a kind of terror. Guardian Thunder Seal. Lei Jiuyo roared. In between his eyebrows, a silver square seal appeared and released a silver soul fluctuation. It was Lei Jiuyo's Sea of Consciousness Guardian spiritual object. Of course, such a spiritual object could only be obtained by those who were lucky. For example, Xian Hao's Golden Spirit Soul Protection Bell. If Yi Guqin had not broken through, Lei Jiuyo's Guardian Thunder Seal might not be able to do anything to him. However, it was different now. Yi Guqin immediately communicated with the meteorite demon soul butterfly in his Sea of Consciousness. In an instant, the meteorite demon soul butterfly flapped its wings. Then, a needle as thin as a cow's hair flew out from between Yi Guqin's eyebrows and into the void. It was hard to notice. The needle that was formed by soul power penetrated the Guardian Thunder Seal's defense and landed in Lei Jiuyo's Sea of Consciousness. Then, it exploded. Ah! Lei Jiuyo let out a shrill scream. First, he felt a sharp pain in his head. Then, the soul power in his head exploded. He had a splitting headache and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. What is this? Lei Jiuyo's body shook. Yi Guqin's footsteps flashed and he took advantage of the opportunity. The needle was naturally a new skill that the meteorite demon's soul butterfly had comprehended after its transformation. It was called the Soul Breaker Needle. If the star's soul wave was a fierce area skill, the Soul Breaker Needle could break through the defense of most guardian spiritual objects and attack the enemy's sea of consciousness. It was impossible to guard against this move. Yiguchen held the blood hell sword and charged forward. Lei Jiuyo was in a frenzy. His eyes were bleeding and he stared at Yiguchen. 5 Crown King, die. 9 Dragons Mysterious Bomb, go. Lei Jiuyo roared furiously and took out the strongest variant lightning that he had refined previously, the 9 Dragons Mysterious Bomb. Chapter 566. Yiguchen's tactics had infuriated Lei Jiuyo. At the same time, Lei Jiuyo knew that if he did not unleash all his skills today, there was a risk that he would die here. 5 Crown King was more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. Hence, Lei Jiuyo made a prompt decision and took out the 9 Dragons' Dark Thunder. The power of the 9 Dragons' Dark Thunder was far stronger than the 2 exotic thunders that Lei Jiuyo possessed. Plus, the 9 Dragons' Dark Thunder could form 9 dragon-shaped thunderbolts and it was extremely powerful. Lei Jiuyo activated the exotic thunders and suddenly, 9 dragon roars filled the entire space. The void seemed to be filled with thunderbolts as 9 huge lightning dragons flew out from Lei Jiuyo's body. Their bodies were made of lightning and they spat out thunderbolts. The aura was terrifying. Interesting. Yiguchen's eyes twinkled. 5 Crown King, I'll let you have a taste of the power of the 9 Dragons' Dark Thunder. Lei Jiuyo raised his hand and a huge lightning dragon opened its mouth to bite. Yiguchen held the blood hell sword and the sword radiance spat out. The purple void mysterious thunder was wrapped around the sword and he slashed at the huge lightning dragon. However, to Yiguchen's surprise, the huge lightning dragon opened its mouth and swallowed the purple void mysterious thunder. In Yiguchen's body, the 5-colored totem power gushed out and formed a shield around his body. However, he was still hit by the huge lightning dragon and he was forced to take a dozen steps back. Just one lightning dragon was already so powerful, let alone 9 of them. Seeing that Yiguchen was pushed back, Lei Jiuyo's tensed face relaxed slightly. However, he wasn't in a good condition either. His sea of consciousness was injured and his 7 orifices were bleeding. If it wasn't for the Guardian Thunder Seal suppressing his sea of consciousness, Lei Jiuyo would have fainted long ago. Lei Jiuyo triggered his thoughts and the second lightning dragon flew at Yiguchen again. Lei Jiuyo was confident that he could severely injure Yiguchen with the 2 lightning dragons attacking at the same time. However, the corners of Yiguchen's mouth curled into a faint smile. Let me see if your 9 Dragons Profound Bomb is more powerful or if my Nirvana Heart Demon Flame is more powerful. Yiguchen thought to himself. Suddenly, a pitch-black flame rose from his body. The temperature of the pitch-black flame was extremely high. It distorted space and emitted waves of heat. What was even more surprising was that as the pitch-black flame spread, wave after wave of frightening soul ripples that resembled the wails of ghosts and the howls of wolves also poured out in all directions. That is. Such an unforeseen event caused Lei Jiuyo's expression to freeze once again. Yiguchen raised his hand, and the pitch-black flames turned into lines of fire that surged out and entangled the 2 thunder dragons that were bombarding him. At a glance, it looked like 2 lightning dragons were entangled by pitch-black flames. This scene caused Lei Jiuyo to be extremely shocked. He knew very well how powerful the 9 Dragons Profound Bomb was. It could be said that the 9 Dragons Profound Bomb was an extremely explosive energy. Ordinary unusual fire and lightning could not compete with the 9 Dragons Profound Bomb. However, the strange pitch-black flame was able to compete with the 9 Dragons Profound Bomb. Lei Jiuyo's eyes flickered as though he had thought of something. He stared at Yiguchen and said in an indescribable tone, "Could that be the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame?" Lei Jiuyo knew that the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame existed in the Lightning Fire Ancient Cave. In the past, when the door of the ancient god opened, many saints and saintesses of the fire tribe wanted to refine it. However, in the end, without exception, all of them suffered a backlash and were burned to death. As time passed, no one dared to touch the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame anymore. It could be said that the Nirvana Heart Demon Flame was definitely not weaker than the 9 Dragons' profound bomb. However, he did not expect Yiguchin to be able to refine it. 9 Dragons' Raging Dipper. Lei Jiuyo's face was terrifyingly gloomy. Yiguchin's moves were endless and had exceeded his expectations time and time again. If he did not go all out, he might really be defeated. He used his moves again, and this time, he did not hold back. The 9 lightning dragons attacked at the same time and roared in the void. The strong power of lightning almost filled every crack in the place. Lei Jiuyo's body was also surrounded by lightning, and he attacked Yiguchin. Yiguchin raised his hand, and a pitch-black flame surged out. It seemed to have formed a curtain of flames, and shrouded the 9 thunder and lightning dragons that were attacking him. The pitch-black flames collided with the lightning dragons, and there was a burst of flames and lightning. They clashed and wore each other down. Lei Jiuyo held the lightning rod and attacked. There was light in Yiguchin's eyes, and the blood hell sword in his hand released a shocking sword light. He fought with Lei Jiuyo again. Flames, lightning, rod shadows, and sword light intertwined and burst out with a roar. The entire space shook and the cone-like rocks fell from the top of the cave. In an instant, they were turned into dust by the flames and lightning. At the moment of the fight, there were 2 pitch-black sparks in Yiguchin's eyes. When Lei Jiuyo saw the pitch-black flames, he was shocked. The scene in front of him changed, and Lei Jiuyo, who was covered in blood, appeared in front of him. Lei Jiuyo, why didn't you take revenge for me? Why didn't you kill Sword Sect? I know that you are useless. You are not fit to be my brother. The curses entered Lei Jiuyo's mind, and he hesitated. When Yiguchin saw it, he moved his feet and the sword light swept out. Lei Jiuyo quickly came back to his senses, and he could not dodge in time. His shoulder was grazed and blood splattered. Damn it! It is the heart demon fire of the extinguishing heart demon flame. Blood flowed out from the corner of Lei Jiuyo's mouth, and he looked ferocious. The extinguishing heart demon flame could trigger the heart demon fire and cause Lei Jiuyo's divine soul to be in a trance. On the other side, Yiguchin also felt that after using the heart demon flame, his soul power was greatly depleted. It seems that using this move consumes a lot of soul power. Fortunately, I have broken through to the perfect sea of consciousness. Otherwise, I would not be able to use this move. Yiguchin thought to himself. He opened his mouth again and said, "Aren't you curious why I attacked you in the valley?" Lei Jiuyo's expression froze. He was also curious. He had no enmity with 5 Crown King. Why would 5 Crown King attack him and stop him from taking revenge on Sword Sect Talon? Although you are going to die, before you die, you will know who killed you. After Yiguchin said that, he stomped his foot and a terrifying blood-red sword intent spread out. At the same time, a vigorous golden true chi surged out from Yiguchin's extreme sea of chi. This is true chi. Lei Jiuyo was stunned because of the extreme shock. God-slaying sword technique, Yama. Golden true chi poured into the blood hell sword. Behind Yiguchin, the shadow of Yama appeared. A sword slashed across the sky. The blood-red sword light seemed to want to split the surroundings. Even the flames and lightning were cut apart. True chi, sword technique, sword intent. Could it be that you are? Lei Jiuyo's eyes were filled with extreme shock. He wanted to see through Yiguchin. I am Yiguchin from the Sword Sect. After he said that, the blood-red sword light filled the sky. Lei Jiuyo hurriedly used a move to block it. The shock on his face could not be concealed. Sword Sect, 5 Crown King. When the 2 identities were combined into one, the 2 of them became one. No one could remain calm. If this spread out, it would cause a huge uproar among the 7 major forces and the barbarian tribe. Chapter 567. Bang! There was a loud crash. Lei Jiuyo held the thunder rod in his hand and swept across the sky, colliding with the bloody hell sword. However, the god-slaying sword principle that was supported by Azura sword essence was extremely powerful. Even Lei Jiuyo took a few steps back and coughed out blood. However, the shock in his heart caused his face to freeze. When Yiguchen revealed his identity as Five-Crown King, although he was shocked, he wasn't too surprised. Now, Yiguchen had once again revealed his identity as a sword master. This caused Lei Jiuyo to be extremely shocked. An outsider with a primogenitor totem, one of the 5 primogenitor totems, had become the Five-Crown King. If the news spread, it would definitely shock the barbarian tribe, and even 5 Elements Temple would be shocked. No, how is that possible? I don't believe it. You are an outsider. How can you become the Five-Crown King of the barbarian tribe? Lei Jiuyo shook his head madly and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Moreover, Yiguchen had killed his brother, Lei Jiuming. Hence, he had formed an irreconcilable grudge. It's just an opportunity, Yiguchen looked indifferent. He activated his genuine chi and totem power at the same time. The 5 ancestor totems suppressed Lei Jiuyo's sky-devouring thunderous beast totem. His aura and cultivation base were suppressed by at least 30%. It was extremely fatal. Yiguchen's eyes flashed and he activated the sword essence in his body again. Boom! Along with the sword essence that soared into the sky, an illusory primordial sacred mountain appeared in midair. The surrounding space was slightly distorted as though gravity had changed. It was the sword realm of edgeless sword essence, gravity sword realm. The moment the gravity sword realm appeared, Lei Jiuyo felt his body being suppressed again. It was as though there was a 5 elements mountain on his shoulder and he was under constant pressure. The ancestor totem and the gravity sword realm suppressed Lei Jiuyo's power by at least 50%. It was extremely terrifying. Damn it! Lei Jiuyo's face was extremely gloomy. Sword Master, 5-Crown King, just one identity was enough to make it difficult for him to deal with. Not to mention the fact that Yiguchen had unleashed his full strength. With the 2 types of energy complementing each other, his strength had skyrocketed. Even a true minor profound martial realm expert wouldn't be able to suppress him. I'm not convinced. Pay with your life for my younger brother. Lei Jiuyo bellowed. The veins on his neck bulged. It was obvious that he was going to use his ultimate skill. Bloodline of the Thunder God. Lei Jiuyo was practically burning his own bloodline. As the bloodline of the Thunder God was fully activated, streaks of lightning energy shot out of his body, forming a silver armor on the surface of his body. Lightning shot out from his eyes. Chi La. Lei Jiuyo's figure flashed like lightning as he charged towards Yiguchen. This was with the suppression of the gravity sword domain. Otherwise, Lei Jiuyo's speed would be even faster. Great Void Sword Wave. Yiguchen held the Blood Hell sword in his hand and resonated with the void. Within the range of the gravity sword domain, the power of the Great Void Sword Wave was even stronger. Streaks of sword wave spread out and crushed the surrounding rocks into dust. When the lightning and the sword wave collided, there were ripples. Yiguchen took a few steps back and felt his arm go numb. Apparently, after Lei Jiuyo had activated the bloodline of the Thunder God, the power of the lightning had increased tremendously. However, Lei Jiuyo wasn't having a good time either. He was hit by the sword wave again and spat out blood. Thunder God's descent. Lei Jiuyo bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood essence in front of him. The blood essence carried traces of lightning energy and changed in the air. In the end, it turned into a seal and fell between Lei Jiuyo's eyebrows. Suddenly, Lei Jiuyo's body was filled with lightning runes and his body expanded like a balloon. Huh! Yiguchen was stunned. The Thunder God's descent was similar to Yiguchen's form after he had activated the Ancient God's skill. However, compared to the Ancient God's skill, Lei Jiuyo's was obviously a fake. If so, let me show you what a real god's descent is like. Yiguchen activated the ancient god's skill in his body. In an instant, his body grew taller and ancient runes filled the air. At the same time, a faint star mark appeared between his eyebrows. No, how is this possible? This is the form of the ancestor. Lei Jiuyo opened his eyes wide. Yiguchen's trump cards were endless. Then, he had revealed the form of the ancestor of the barbarian tribe. Thunderstorm 9 Heavens. Lei Jiuyo burned his body and activated it with all his might. Even the sky-devouring thunderbolt beast exploded into a ball of lightning and was absorbed by Lei Jiuyo. His 3 exotic thunders, Blood Soul Demonic Thunder, Dark Sky Thunder and 9 Dragons Dark Thunder were all absorbed by him. Lei Jiuyo's body seemed to have turned into a thunderbolt and he charged towards Yiguchen. It could be said that even if Tuoba Shang was there, he would not be able to block it easily. Yiguchen covered his body with the heavenly demon general armor. At the same time, he held the blood hell sword in his ancient god body and attacked. God-slaying sword skill, Permitha. As the sword slashed out, crimson-red Permitha flowers bloomed in the void. Moreover, Yiguchen's body was still in the form of an ancient god and it was enhanced with terrifying power. Bang! The collision caused the entire lightning fire ancient cave to rumble. It was as if the world had been turned upside down. Puff! Lei Jiuyo was sent flying and his mouth was filled with blood. He wanted to take advantage of the aftermath of the collision to escape. Yiguchen, you're dead meat. Spread the news and you won't be able to walk out of the door of the ancient god. Lei Jiuyo roared as he escaped. Do you think you can leave? Yiguchen looked indifferent as he activated his sea of consciousness. A terrifying soul power gushed out and hit Lei Jiuyo's sea of consciousness. He felt dizzy and his 7 orifices started to bleed again. At the same time, the meteorite demonic butterfly released the soul-breaking star needle and pierced it into Lei Jiuyo's sea of consciousness. When it exploded, Lei Jiuyo's body shook and his speed decreased drastically. Reincarnation Sword Lotus. Yiguchen raised one of his hands and boundless sword chi gathered in his palm and turned into a beautiful golden lotus. He flicked his finger and the golden lotus hit Lei Jiuyo's body. In an instant, he was wrapped up. As the sword lotus spun, he was cut into pieces and blood splattered. In just a few breaths' time, the holy son of the Thunder tribe died on the spot and turned into a pile of flesh and bones. Lei Jiuyo is not weak. Yiguchen wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. Just now, Lei Jiuyo's thunderstorm 9 heavens had also caused some injuries to him. Fortunately, Lei Jiuyo had not completely broken through the life and death challenge. Otherwise, it would be more troublesome to deal with him. Lei Jiuyo's death was a huge shock to the barbarian tribe. However, Yiguchen looked indifferent as if he did not think that he had done anything serious. Let's leave this place. Yiguchen's body flew out. Outside the lightning fire ancient cave, the wooden bell spirit had been waiting for a long time. She looked anxious. She had also sensed the rumbles coming from the lightning fire ancient cave. However, her body was of the wood attribute and it was difficult for her to enter the ancient cave that was filled with strange fire and lightning. Hence, she could only wait outside. Just as the wooden bell spirit's face changed, Yiguchen walked out of the ancient cave. Dugu Wubai, you've finally come out. Let's leave quickly. The Mulan Saintess sent news that they've arrived outside the tomb of the gods and devils and are confronting the Tuoba camp. The situation isn't good. However, the tomb of the gods and devils might really be open this time, said the wooden bell spirit. Let's go. Yiguchen said, you're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.